by Pastor Roger Charles for Peabody Baptist, and will remain standing then for the flag salute right after.
Okay. Council, I appreciate being able to be here. When asked, one of the first things, okay, what should I pray? And I spent the time looking into it, and I've chosen the prayer of Jabez to start my prayer with the prayer of Jabez in 1 Chronicles chapter 4, in verse 9 and 10. Jabez was more honorable than his brothers, and his mother called his name Jabez. And verse 10, and Jabez called on the God of Israel, saying, Oh, that you would bless me indeed, and enlarge my territory, that your hand would be with me, and that you would keep me from evil, that I may not cause pain. So God granted him what he requested. The point is that Wilkerson made, Jabez didn't ask, make it for me. He asked that he would be increased so that he could be a blessing to others. So let's pray. Father, I thank you. And Father, as a commission, I thank you for the privilege of being asked to be here. And Father, I just pray this prayer of Jabez for this commission, that they would seek to be blessed and to be increased, but not for self-seeking, not for self-indulgence. But Father, only so that they could be a greater blessing to their family, to their community, and ultimately back to you again. And Father, I ask that you would help and bind them together and be of one accord. Father, help them to see the bigger picture and stay focused on the business that is most important. Father, I pray that you would bless them and make them better so that Marion County can benefit. And I ask your blessing upon them and upon this meeting. For I pray it in faith believing in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry about the phone.
We'll call the meeting to order. And Tina has the administrative.
Okay, I have the minutes of June 4th.
Minutes of June 4th. Anybody want to make a motion to accept the minutes of June 4th?
I would.
Got a motion for the minutes of June
Motion,
4th?
yeah, I've got to say the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, say the whole thing.
Better make a motion to accept the minutes of June 4th as presented.
Got a motion on the table by Randy to accept the minutes as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Kent. All in favor say aye.
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 In your packets, you do have the clerk's report, the administrative expenditures reports, and then your department revenue reports. And then we do have early checks. We have quite a few today.
Oh, we do? Okay. Oh, I did see that, yes. Also, I had asked a question a couple weeks ago about where on the line items for donations to different departments. Is this, you said that you would show me that. Would I be able, would you have a few minutes after the meeting to be able to do that?
Yep.
Okay. Quite a few, so can I take some of these out of here so we can, or not?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do.
I was going to see if we can speed it along a little bit. They're not in any particular order, or are they?
They are, but we can get them back. It's not a
Okay, so
big
we'll
deal.
just do that first tabulation first.
It's really not a problem.
Okay.
Just on the top. You don't need to do all of the pages.
Oh, okay.
Just do the green page.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and give you the start of the next evaluation.
This one's already been signed. This is a complete one. It's a complete.
Okay, and that's the complete, and that's the complete. That's the complete.
Yes.
Like that. Like that. Yep, you're a mess. Will Mr. Jantz be here today?
No, he will not be here today. He was finding it and he's not well this morning.
Oh. Okay.
In your packet, you do have preliminary agenda for the KAC conference, which is in October. The conference hotel is sold out, but I have made room reservations at another hotel in the area for everyone. That way, it won't also sell out while you decide if you're going to attend. And I believe you said you would like to attend, so we'll process your conference registration. But if you two gentlemen would let me know, sometime in June would be a great time for me to be able to know if you're going to plan to attend. If that is possible.
I know
Okay.
that I'll be there for at least half of it,
Okay.
maybe all of
We do have a budget work session all day on Wednesday, starting at 8 in the morning. And so just wanted to remind you of that. It will be fun. And then I have, this is about the time of year that we would normally approve the fireworks schedule. And so I've got a little packet for each of you to look at there, and if we can set the hours that fireworks will be allowed to be sold and discharged. This is not within city limits, this is within the county. So in the middle, you'll see what we did last year.
I assume that worked out well last year, does anybody know? I mean, I never heard any
Yeah,
problems.
usually don't. The only thing we've got this year is you've got the second, the third, both in the weekdays. That's the only thing that's, probably the weekend, the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then you got Wednesday and Thursday up there too, to start it off with. Just in respect to the working people, that's the only thing that we try to.
So, how would you adjust that? It
Let's
says
see.
till 12. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to. It says till, no, last year we did it till 12.
Yeah.
So, even if you reduce that down to 11 or 10 or something, I don't know that that's anything too much, but. And that's for the sale events, right? That's not necessarily, or that's when you
It's
shoot
the
off.
sale and
Shoot
discharge.
Shoot
Mhm.
time, shoot time too.
Okay.
I guess maybe on Wednesday and Thursday of the 27th, 28th, just to kick it around, I'd look at 11 then, and then on the Monday, 11.
Monday the 2nd.
Monday the 2nd, Tuesday the 3rd, I don't know, whether you go back up to 12 then, for the 4th. And then Wednesday's a work day too, so.
You mean Thursday?
Wednesday, yeah, excuse me, Thursday's the work day, but Wednesday's the 4th, so, I would.
Keep it consistent. What's the hour? I mean, so don't go 11 straight through? I mean, I'm just asking you.
Yeah,
That way everybody know.
Well, we do publish this also, and we'll post it once you decide what it is.
I have no preference personally, so
I don't either, I mean,
if that bothers me, I mean,
I guess for those that are selling, it would probably be nice if they knew every day was the same time.
yeah.
Maybe not, I don't know.
Yeah, and there's a lot of times after 11 you don't sell too much anyway. This is shoot-off time though, too. That's not only sell time. So, I don't know whether to keep it on the 4th, keep it midnight okay after at Peabody. You get out at Peabody, you get fireworks over with at 10:30, 10:45 sometimes. And people, if they do go home and shoot anything afterwards, why, it's midnight before you see or hear the less shooting going on. But then there's always the person that wants to sit out there and crank them out all night.
you got so many days
Yeah.
here, from Wednesday to
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'd say 11 myself straight through, because
I
I have no
think the
problem with
weekend,
whatever.
weekend, go to 12 and try the rest of 11. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the 29th, 30th, and maybe the 1st even at 12, the rest of 11. I guess I'd like to make that motion.
What days do you want to?
The Wednesday, the Thursday, 27th, 28th, 11th. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th at 11. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the 29th, 30th, 31st, and 12th. That's a weekend. I sort of think that might be the weekend if anybody does anything. Might be the.
Doesn't matter to me.
Doesn't matter to me.
So
It's down and up and down.
Yeah. It stays at 11.
but that was,
all the
you
time.
stayed that as a
Yes.
motion, Randy?
Mhm.
Okay.
So Randy made a motion to go with 11, 11, 12, 12, 12, 11, 11, 11.
Yeah.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Kent, all in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye. Okay. You done? Okay. I wanted to, last week I made probably a mistake. And I'd like to revisit that, but I was hoping that Mr. Jantz would be here, and since he's not, I will table it till next week, because I think he needs to be here. And what I did was, and it's in the minutes as well, it's when we had the discussion on the IT that got hung up in the spam filter.
Mhm.
I did just a little bit more study and research on that and dug up some paperwork and stuff like that, so I would like to revisit that. And I think I just made a decision without being informed, a little hasty. So I would just like to revisit it with the commission, but I do think Mr. Jantz should be here. So we need to talk about that next week if we can.
If you all want to review that, might be good to decide to review it now, since we're reviewing all the others. If you're having a change of heart about the review, is that what you were talking about? No, that you didn't review it, you said you decided not to.
That we actually didn't even consider the bid is what I was,
Mhm.
because it got hung up in the,
Because I didn't follow through and make sure it was received.
yes.
Right.
Yes.
If the commission wants to overturn that and have it reviewed, that's fine. I want to let you know, I am hiring a third-party reviewer, and they are looking at those this week, because somebody with the technical background, so that you all have the correct information. So if you would like to include that, this would probably be the time to do it, rather than waiting another week.
Well, and the reason I say that is that I know you had said, because I do, and I am, I'm a stickler and abiding by the law. But when I read the way the proposal was written, it does leave speculation as to the responsibility of the person providing the bid, as how you interpret that. That's why I was asking for Mr. Jantz, because I do want to abide by the law. But I wanted to make sure that we were not slapping the hands of a bidder, you know, and cutting ourselves out of a prospective bidder, because we're looking at the best scenario.
Right, that's what why I brought it to you, so that you all could decide if you wanted to include it or not.
And see, like I say, last week I didn't have any information, so I had to go back and I dug up the proposal that you presented to us a while back as to how, you know, some of the requirements, and that.
Well, I would have been happy to provide that for you. Hopefully you have the most recent, the final one that went out.
Well, the one that I have is probably not the most recent, but it does give me enough speculation to think that in the spirit of the law, and for what our end goal is, we would not want to eliminate this, or any bidders at this point. So, but I'm asking the commission what they think about it, because I know this is gonna come back.
There's one question that I would ask is,
Sure.
on the number of bids that we had, did the rest of them follow up?
They did, all of them did, and this particular bidder, they did come out and they met with us and everything, so, you know, you hate to exclude it.
Right.
And they did send it on time, but the thing that they did not do, that every other bidder did, was to go ahead and contact us to make sure we had received it. And a bunch of them were caught in a spam filter, and so we put that in there specifically because we did not want to have the responsibility of having to go out and make sure that the bids were there, because we didn't know. But it's, either way, whatever you guys decide to do is fine.
It was written up that way.
It was.
In the bid process.
It was, but again, whatever you guys decide to do is
What are you
fine.
thinking?
Well, he did, you know, they didn't, the concern I have is that they didn't follow up and say, did you get it? Which all the others did.
Mhm.
And so I will just add one other thing. And the reason that, when I read it in the minutes, it just kind of hit me there, that I should have never, and I will never do it again, and that is make a decision without information. But what hit me when I read that was the spam, hitting the spam filter. And I know from my past experience working in Fort Riley, all of our data entry clerks, or whatever clerk you want to name it, the responsibility at the end of the day was to back up your system and check your spam filter, because you don't want to miss any documents that would be important,
Sure.
mission, essential, or whatever. So I was going to ask Mr. Jantz, I'm almost thinking that there is a dual responsibility there. But like I say, that's just from my past experience of what came to my attention after I went back and read exactly how it was worded in the proposal. It does say that they need to call, but it doesn't say that they need to call by the end of the bid date. It just said they need to follow up with the phone call. So, but, okay, Mr. Becker, what do you say?
I don't have any problem looking at it. I mean,
Well, if you're not going to consider it, you don't want to look at it. I mean,
Well, I
we're
didn't
looking
say
at the
that.
law
I
here.
said
How
I
do we
didn't-
want to handle our bids is the question.
you know, I didn't say I wouldn't consider it. I just said I don't have a problem looking at it.
What do you say? Because it's also how we handle other bids as well.
Well, this outside party you're talking about, Tina, don't have a bid, right, on there? The outside party that you're consulting with doesn't have nothing
No,
to
they
do with
don't.
bids.
No. They're a a third-party firm, and they did not submit a bid.
Okay.
So I would not have one of the bidders review.
Right, right. Well, we don't do everything perfect here at the commission.
That's
You know,
true.
we try, but we try to do our best, and we try doing the best for whatever we think is best for everybody. I guess if you've got a third party out here, an outside party, you could look at it, whether you question with Mr. Jantz, whether you could have them look at it and then have that office decide this is one concern. I don't know if that makes any difference or not. I'm just saying that you can do that.
So you're saying, go ahead and include it in the third-party review, and
Review,
then when Mr.
yeah.
Jantz is here, you can decide
Yeah,
for
if
sure
that's,
whether
if
you're
that's
gonna.
what the chairman's,
Are we making it even more complex then? I mean, we either accept it or we don't.
okay.
I mean, I think that was the question, rather than looking at the bid and then say, oh, no, we're not gonna accept this because you didn't call.
No, that's not what I don't believe that's what he's saying. I think what he's saying is, if you wanted to follow up with the attorney for the legalities of it, you could do that when he comes here and determine whether or not you wanna
Okay, so-
wanna accept it. But then, in the meantime, go ahead and have it reviewed like the others.
Personally, I'm saying because of the legalities, I think we should include it. But I wanted to bring that, for the sake of transparency and to make sure that I'm correct, I wanted it before the commission as a whole decision, okay?
Mhm, sure.
It came to my attention as I read that maybe I made a mistake by not doing that to begin with, asking for more information. So that's why I'm asking the commission.
Yeah, and I'm not changing your tone or anything. I'm just saying that all we need to do is include it in with this third party, and if we decide to take it as a bid, why, that's,
Oh, okay, because the bid would be falling to what we're looking for. We're gonna accept it as a bid, we're gonna go ahead and
no,
accept it.
no, I didn't say that. I said we would review it with the party, have it reviewed, and if we want to make that decision today, fine, but if you want to talk to the lawyer, and if the lawyer has some input on why it's legal or not legal, about being held up, we can make that decision next week if he's here. That's just an option, that's all I'm saying.
I think he's just trying to give you the option of if you want, go ahead and talk to the attorney before you accept it, but yet not put this bid behind the timeline then.
But it would let the reviewer take a look at it and see what comparisons.
Okay, well, that's, I'm gonna say yes, because I think it's important to go ahead and consider it. And then I will talk to Mr. Jansen, or Jantz, I'm sorry, and if it turns out if my interpretation of the way it's written up is incorrect, then we'll throw it out. Is that what you're saying?
How about if we all talk to Mr. Jantz when he gets here, and then he can tell us all?
Well, that's what I was saying.
No, you said you talked to him.
Well, when he comes here, I was gonna talk to him and present what my thoughts are. I mean, unless you want to tell me what my thoughts
No,
are.
right here, when he comes, that's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, that's what I said.
Okay, would the commission take some sort of an action to include that in the third-party review and then to determine the legality of that next week when Mr. James is
I will
at the
make that
meeting?
motion to accept the third bid from the party that's sending a proposal for IT on a timely basis but failed to call. I'd like that bid included in the review.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
Okay,
Okay,
but
motion
that's,
for-
wouldn't that be, it would be contingent upon our legal counsel saying it's appropriate,
Yeah.
otherwise.
Do you want to
it's not.
include that in your motion?
Okay. So I'll make a motion that we include the bid that was stuck in this spam filter for the IT based upon the review of Mr. Jantz's after the determination of the writing.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Pent. Vector, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay.
We could say who the bidder was because we have all the bidders out publicly before. We didn't say, we don't know what the bid is, but we know who the bidder was, right?
We do.
Okay. So it's a bidder in your district, it's a local bidder, TCT. is the one that it was.
TC Wireless.
Yes.
Oh, Tri-County?
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. So you said you're done?
Yes, I was.
We'll move on then to Isaac Het, Park and Lake Department.
So I went back over to Hillsborough and spoke to Mr. I was going to say, he gave me a packet kind of everything he had on this vending machine. If you guys would want to look at this top one is actually who he got it from. The second one here is kind of a layout as to possibilities, what you could put in it. They are a company that you can buy the products for. They're not in charge of the vending machine. That first one is there. As far as, I know the warranty was a question that we discussed. It is, he had an original 5-year warranty. I called the gentleman, his name's Gary, from the vending company. He said he would put, typically they don't do it if they sell it. He said he will do a 1-year warranty for us if we purchase it. That is something that he was open to. And along with that, we have all the programming books. And speaking to Mr. Gumby over there, he said a lot of the bait that he had in there, he actually bought from Bills and McPherson, and then there's a DMF that he bought some from, and he said, you know, kind of depending on what you want in there, you can adjust, because some of the packages will just get it better, I guess, when they drop, or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
So you don't have to clean up a warm mess at the bottom, is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Exactly. But yeah, so we would do the 1-year warranty. There was, I think last week I said there was 20 to 30 slots in it. There's actually 40 with the different sizes. He said he would be willing to sell the machine, all the extra coils with the different sizes that he had, which there was like an additional 50, I think. And then he had about 5 boxes of different size packaging for worms or whatever you want to put in there. With the machine, he also has a freezer that he said he's put extra stuff in. He said if we wanted it, we could have it. If not, it doesn't matter. For $27.50, he said was the lowest he'd be able to go on it.
I've had some phone calls from concerned citizens out there. They, I think that's all we're going to do for them. And I said, well, this is a start, folks. I mean, this is just a start. This is not the final thing or anything. I said, it's a start to get us started. There's a 24/7 that service there that you can use, and so there was a little different attitude after they heard that, but you know. And I said, if we did the rest of the stuff over there that John has and stuff over there, why we'd have to decide whether we wanted it inside the building for you to sell when your office hours are open or not. And so they was a little more, I guess, willing or whatever to accept it. So that's, I'm just saying that's most of them was concerned about. That's all we're going to get. That's all we're going to get. That was the question.
Well, personally, I think at this time, this is an awesome buy, and I think it is a good start.
That's a start.
And as far as going any further than that, I think we've had some different opinions and thoughts that we need to work out a little bit later. That's my thoughts on it. I mean, this does provide them with a lot of supplies, really, and it's handy for everybody.
Right.
So, Kent, what do you think?
We're ready to make a motion to purchase.
Well, then, make your move.
Okay, I'll make a motion to go ahead and purchase the bait vending machine from the lumber yard in Hillsborough for $2,750.
Second?
Go ahead.
No, I was asking for.
Yeah, second.
I have a motion by Kent and a second by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
That's it?
That's it for me. I'll be back later.
Okay, well, that was good.
You're gonna give us a good report on something else that happened out there.
We did get electricity to the stage.
Would he deliver it for us?
Say that again.
The machine?
We had that discussion. He said he thought we're gonna have, it's 980 pounds.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy on
Yeah, it's a heavy machine. We do have a trailer. Now, whether we can get, he has a forklift that I think we can get it up to on a trailer.
Yeah, that's okay.
And
That's
haul it
fine.
over. Yeah.
Thank you, Isaac, appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
Make sure you anchor that, strap that dude down. Don't- And 40 miles an hour, 'cause that thing could be top heavy. I don't know if it is or not, but it could be.
Okay. Something we probably need to add to the county's insurance policy then, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay? Thank you again. John from Kirk and Michael. Have a seat. Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
John.
You want to sit over there?
Oh,
We
sure.
do that for our audio so that people can hear.
Not a problem.
Thank you.
Welcome. So I believe we're here to talk about some hauling on the wind farm. And my understanding of the discussion is there's a couple of local trucking companies that have asked to use some non-approved haul routes. And I think that where the discussion is headed is if they could utilize them basically to get to and from the wind farm, basically at the beginning of the day to get there and at the end of the day to get home, as they probably normally would go to any project, as long as they're unloaded, so that they're not incurring additional load on the road surfaces. I think that we would be okay with allowing that if they can give us information on which trucks. I don't know how big these companies are off the top of my head, but it looks like in the email that they said each of them had, I think, 2 trucks that they typically use. They gave us their truck numbers and their company name. And so as long as they're unloaded, and again, just basically going to and from the job in the beginning and end of the day, I think that's pretty easy for our guy to keep track of. And as long as we can clearly draw that line that they are local companies in the county that, and they have a business establishment, whether that may be out of their home or not, doesn't necessarily matter, but we know where they're going to and where they're coming from. I think it's fairly manageable. Is that
Yeah, and I
reasonable?
would add to it that it's the Hike Boys, and their trucks are registered in Marion. They use them all the time to haul rock to their place of business, their farm. They use them for harvest. They use them all the time in their business. They are residences in Marion. They pay all the taxes. They are taxpayers. And they are just asking to be able to go to and from work. They fully realize that if they abuse this by any means at all, they will be fined the appropriate fine. And I made that very clear. But it is a hindrance to them to have to go all the way down 15 and cross 56 and then back up 77 and so on every day to go to work and to come back to work on an empty truck that under any other circumstances they drive on the roads every day.
right?
So it just sounds kind of redundant to me that we are poking the bear, to say the least.
I think that makes sense. That in my mind is like if they were hauling anywhere else, it wouldn't have been
Right, exactly.
a big deal at all. So it's really not changing anything in that respect.
Right, right.
So I think that sounds reasonable to me as well.
And are they starting at a certain point in Tampa? Are they starting at the rock quarry or?
I think
I don't know what they're
once
doing.
they get loaded is when they actually start their job. Am I right? Once they go and get a load, then they actually are officially on the clock by,
As far as the road maintenance agreement,
no, I mean as far as their job, as far as with
They're
trailer,
paid by
that I
the,
don't know for
they're
sure.
paid by the load, I understand.
I think.
Yeah, I don't know how their agreement's set up with Tradewind, to be honest.
But I also understand that one of them's already incurred a fine.
That's what I believe I've heard. I don't have the list of all the trucks in front of me that are in line, but I believe that's correct.
Because it's not addressed in the road maintenance agreement to handle this situation. So it's not even addressed.
Right.
But, and I know they had talked to you a couple of weeks ago, and so then they called me to see if we could get something done. And so that's why I pursued to call and check the road maintenance agreements and check everything and make sure that, and I don't want to persevere. There's common sense needs to apply, is what I think.
In the RMA and the road maintenance agreement, obviously it's not going to address every
Right.
particular situation.
Correct.
There's no rule of law can. So as they come up, we'll address them. I think, like you said, I think it makes sense in this particular issue that we can make an accommodation. Again, if we need them to comply with, they are going to stick to these particular roads when they're coming to and from.
And so you brought up a point that one of them has, and I think I did hear that one of them has incurred a fine.
Right.
I wonder if we could maybe waive that fine, because at the time, they went by the road maintenance agreement, but they got a fine without us actually addressing this situation. So I'm wondering if we could go back and maybe waive that, if that's an option, or?
I think that would be up to the commission. If you want to make this retroactive to the beginning of the project. I don't know if they paid the fine. I'd have to do
I
some
know they
checking
have
on that.
not. They haven't paid it yet.
Okay. So I think that's up to the Board of
Well,
Commissioners.
I know one, and he was quite concerned because he felt like it was gonna hurt his relationship with the company if, going forward. So, if we could work out something, maybe to
Is this just one outfit, or did you say two outfits, or just two trucks?
No, it's actually all three
Oh.
hike boys. They all three drive, and they have different trucks, but it's all registered trucks that they use for whatever it is they're hauling, because they haul different things, not just rock.
Right.
But again, like I say, they're gonna start using those same trucks for their own personal business. And so, yeah.
Yeah, there's another individual from the far west side of the county that's now hauling for him too.
So I was just gonna say, I wouldn't wanna make it limited just to the hike, but I would certainly
Yeah.
wanna,
Would be for Marion County.
yeah. And like you said, I'm sorry, and like you said, because we do have copies of their trucks and their numbers and so on. And isn't there also, somebody suggested something about actually identifying the trucks by a marking of some nature, whether it be a flag while they're working or something? So that there's,
I hadn't
I
heard
don't
about
know.
that, but I mean,
But just for easy, because we're gonna start getting inundated with trucks.
oh, certainly.
And so,
Well, the
If you're
company
not
probably
already,
has,
yeah.
does the company assign like a number to each truck?
The wind farm?
Yeah.
No, the trucks have a number based on who they're working for.
Okay.
It's their own internal system. But could we come up with an identifier? I mean, I think unless this gets huge, I think we're talking about just a handful of trucks, and we can
Yeah.
just tell our guy out there, here's the company name. I assume they all have a logo or something on the side of the truck that says who they're working for.
I don't know.
I know these guys do. on their
Or
trucks.
just
I've-
say, here's who it is, and just go meet with them, and they can just show them the truck and who the driver is, and we're talking about 6 trucks or 8 trucks.
I've seen trucks though that guys have gone and bought from companies that'll say such and such feed company from North Dakota, or I saw one of some feed company from Valley Center. Well, those are just trucks that they bought that they didn't get the signage taken off them, and they put them on a road.
So I think if we were talking about, at this point, 3 local businesses, if they would just communicate with our person out in the field and say, this is my company, and just come over real quick today, and I'll show you the truck we're talking about. And we can just identify them, on a case-by-case basis. Again, since we're only talking about 3, now if there was like 50, that might be a little different.
What happens though, you say that, but what happens if harvest gets over with and some people have trucks that could be hired and they decide they want to make some extra money? There could be some, I don't know that there is.
It's possible.
It's possible, so I don't know how many that, when you say just 3, I think that maybe there might be some more out there that may want to pick up a few dollars from the project.
Well, you got some
And I-
working in Harrington too, so they're gonna want, if you start, I'm
talking about Marion County registered trucks. These are our taxpayers.
That's the only ones
These are
you'll let
our-
do
That's
that.
what I'm identifying
Right.
now. Yeah, anybody from the outside, I'm not even addressing that at this time. I'm talking about, these trucks are registered here, these are our taxpayers.
And I can,
Basically just getting to their home base.
Right, get to their home base.
I can see
yeah.
the point of that, if you have a local, if you can park it at home, it's much safer also.
Yeah, more secure, yeah.
And I would think to control it, it would probably be up to the driver to let them know that they're hey, I'm driving and I live here and this is my truck. You know, if they don't want to get fined,
Right.
then I would think they would take it upon themselves and decide that once you relay this to Brian,
Yeah,
you know,
Brian.
or whoever it is that you relay to Trade Wind, they'll put the word out.
Yeah, so again, I think if it's, as long as we can clearly identify who they are and where they're going, I think it's manageable on our end.
James is right, though, there's a bunch sitting in Harrington, sitting up there right now. They're ready to go to work, I don't know if they're working already or what, but there's been about 7 or 8 that I can see in a park.
I mean, that's just my worry, you're gonna have guys, well, why did they get to do it?
No,
But
it's-
if you stick to the Marion
It's
County,
strictly Marion
Marion
County.
I mean, you gotta be,
Yeah, we're not
I don't know if that's gonna create any issues or not.
Well,
I mean,
I don't think so, as long as we say they're resident taxpayers in Marion County.
But they're just doing it of a morning and then an evening quitting time, starting and quitting.
That's what I'm suggesting, it's not just back and forth constantly all throughout the day, it's.
Oh, I gotta go home, take a drink.
And that's my understanding of the request, is as they're leaving in the morning, to go to work, and then when they're coming back, they don't wanna have to park miles away and drive, back home or take a long ride around. With the juice
it
here.
just makes good sense to me to.
So you wanna try a 30-day temporary and see if it gets along?
No, I just want to try it, if issues come up, then we're going to have to address the issues, is what I say. I mean, these are our taxpayers, so I hate to hassle them in any way.
So I'll just ask this, so you mentioned 3 companies, I mean, who's gonna be the ones providing that information to us? Does that need to come from Tradewind then, or as far as which companies we're working with on this deal?
Well, I'm not sure that it's actually companies, it's individuals,
Just local
whoever gets
individuals.
hired. I'm not saying it's companies.
Okay,
Just so happens that this, right here, they have their own truck, they're
Yeah,
company truck.
I just know names, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
trucking
that they're
companies.
companies, so I guess it's just, you can set it up however you feel, whether you want to say individuals that are residents of Marion County. How do you think it would be best? What would you
Should there be
suggest?
some sort of a quick little application that they put on file with Road and Bridge?
Well, I would think with Kirk and Michael, because
And then it
he's
could
the
go
one
to-
they're the ones watching these trucks.
And they could go to you guys through them?
I don't know that it needs to go through.
I mean, because you're asking where to
I
find the
don't know that
information.
does.
Yeah, well, and the names I got came from this Conveyable, and I don't know,
Right.
are they a contractor of the wind farm, is that where they're
Yeah,
coming
that's who
from?
they,
So
that's who they're holding.
They're hiring subs, basically.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think just handle it through Kirk and Michael myself, because like I say, they're the ones out there watching the trucks.
Yeah, I think that's fine, and we'll just let Road and Bridge know which ones we basically approved to do this setup.
Any
How
other
do you get the
questions?
information out to them other than calling them,
Calling who?
those individuals, telling them they need to let the company know that they
That-
are?
Yeah,
Yeah, they'll do it.
we'll have Brian talk to Tradewind,
Okay.
and we'll go through them
Okay.
to get it set up.
If you're going outside your regular road RMA, should you make it an official action to do that?
Yeah, we'll do that. I'll go ahead and make a motion to allow that Marion County taxpayers and residents be allowed to use undesignated haul routes to use their personal vehicles, trucks, to and from work.
Second.
Second, second by Kent. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
And then the secondary part of that is to waive the fine that was issued to Pike Brothers, or?
One of them, I don't know which
I'll find
one.
out which one it was.
Aaron.
Yeah.
He was emptying when he was
And
fine.
we do a separate motion for the fine,
Yeah.
please.
Okay, sure.
I don't know if he was empty or not, I'd have to check and ask that
If he
question.
wasn't empty, then I would have a problem with it.
Okay. How about I follow up?
Okay.
On that one.
I think
Yeah.
that's
Before you do
fair.
your
That would be good.
Yeah.
Let us know the situation.
I can call Brian and come back here
Yeah.
in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Okay, and in your motion, you said undesignated haul routes. Did you mean designated haul routes?
Undesignated haul routes. They're gonna be driving on our regular roads. They're gonna be off the haul
Okay.
routes. Okay, yeah, so I meant undesignated, yes.
Just to start and finish, was that in there?
That's
too?
right, yeah,
It
doing
was.
from work, yes.
Okay.
And I don't know what their hours are, sometimes they might be working late at night, sometimes, you know, but I get Kirk and Michael, I guess, can handle that.
I think the bottom line is you don't care to see a load on non-specific roads.
I beg your
That's-
pardon.
The bottom line is you don't want to see a loaded truck
Exactly,
Right.
exactly, that's it.
non-specific rides all day.
Yeah, does that need to say for sure empty, so they're not thinking they can go park at night and then,
No, they understand.
okay,
Mhm.
because yeah, there's gotta be an empty loader.
They fully understand that, yes.
I haven't noticed any trucks that are sitting parked that were loaded. See a lot of trucks.
I haven't either.
And as I understand it, they, you know, if they have time to get another load, they go get another load, and then they empty that load, and then they go home. If they don't have enough time to do that, they just go home without getting it, that's what I understand. So, thank you.
Okay, I'll go make a phone call, and then I'll come back here in a few minutes.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good,
Call
thank
me
you.
back up here when you're ready.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Mhm. Okay, James? Culvert Supervisor.
You bet. How are you today?
I'm good, how are you?
Oh, it's been interesting this morning already,
Mhm.
but we'll get through it. Got the field bids here. Just pass them down.
You got 3 copies?
For-
You have one for the press as well?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Just 2 of them.
Two, yeah.
That's for a transfer field bid.
So this is a lump sum bid.
Yes, this all goes to the shop.
Make a motion to go with cooperative grain for 18,770.
Have a motion by Randy to go with cooperative grain for transport fuel bid for $18,770. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Kent. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is that it?
That was easy.
Yep. Okay.
And I was just gonna let you know, Friday we set 2 of those half-wind tankers. It was a challenge to get out there, but once the crane got there, we had the hole done at 1 o'clock, and 2 o'clock they were taking the crane down, so.
Location?
220th and Falcon. And we are backfilling it as we speak right now.
Those half tankers have a bottom in them?
Yes.
They do have a bottom. Okay.
And it set real nice.
And no wing walls on these?
They have head
Oh,
walls.
they have head walls?
Yeah, they got one.
But no
Okay.
wing, I mean,
Okay.
but the head walls.
Head walls are.
And we put 2 of them in and we welded them together.
Okay.
Well, they're doing that now, it should be done.
Yeah,
by then,
okay.
we hope.
Okay, all right.
Is that on just a feeder string, or is that on the?
Yes, but then around the corner on Goldenrod, we're gonna put 3 in that one. We got all the permits finally. That took a long time. Because that road, Falcon's been, or 220 has been closed for close to 6 months now.
Okay.
So, waiting on the permits. Jesse, he did it right, so I guess that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
It just took a long time.
Do it right the first time.
Playing with the same trick on 220th as you are on Falcon.
Well, Goldenrod is where we'll put the,
Goldenrod.
we gotta put 3 of them on that one.
Okay.
So that will hopefully start maybe next week. Since the crane's out there, we'll just keep it. That crane was a big challenge for me Friday. We were sitting on Highway 56 working on it. Not a good place to be.
56?
Yes. So, I don't know. I'll talk to Ham about that. We might have to do something with that crane. It's,
What, you had some mechanical problems?
yeah, going down the road.
It's old, isn't it?
It's getting there.
But did it work well? Did it do what
The
you
upper
needed
is
to do?
good. The crane part of itself is the truck, the lower truck is where we're gonna stick some money. I'll talk to Ham about it and see, that's kind of his ballpark and what to do there, so. And he is off this week yet, so it's back surgery.
If that thing breaks down, can you tow it in?
Well, I don't know. That was what the problem was, like, now what do we do? But luckily, we got it fixed pretty easy, but it just,
Well, if you
I
have to
didn't
get-
like being out there, the guys, their feet were that far from the white line.
If
That was
you-
not fun.
What year is that body? It's pretty old,
I couldn't tell you that for sure.
but there's parts available.
We've made some, had some made. I mean,
Well, if it really just totally crapped out on you, wouldn't you have to call a semi-record?
either that or get something big and large to try to, I don't know.
Or get it on the, pull it up on the skid,
See, it wouldn't work, we couldn't put it on our low boy.
you wouldn't go on
It's
our
too,
low one.
too heavy, it's a heavy piece of equipment.
Okay.
It got the job done, so, but it was a challenge. I mean, I was real proud of our guys. They stepped up, and I don't know. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about, you guys talking about training and stuff, and these guys a lot of them know what's going on. It's just,
How many, we have 3 or 4 certified on that?
we've got one completely done, and the other one left us.
Oh.
So
And then we
you
got
have
another
one?
one that needs to do a little more on it.
So there's
due
one
to the
working to get a certification?
Yes.
Okay. So we need more than one.
Yeah, because we only have one right now.
One
okay?
that can, yeah. The other one has got most of the test all day, he's just gotta do the practical. So he can still operate it, but he can't. Well, that's up until 2019. You actually don't have to have they keep pushing that back, I guess, is what Jason told me.
You don't have to have what?
The license.
Really?
But by next year,
Really?
it was supposed to be this year, and supposedly they pushed it back.
So you go through the test and you have so long before you have to actually, I'm sorry, go through the training.
He goes through he's certified, but you don't actually have to have the certification until 19, I think now.
So he has it,
we'll
but he
we'll have
doesn't
two
have
of
to
them.
have it, is that what you're saying?
We will have to have it.
Oh,
will.
yeah, okay,
About
okay,
18.
I'm sorry, I
But-
didn't,
And it was supposed to be 18 is what,
Okay.
the way I understand the guys have told me from last year is that they were supposed to have it done by 18 and then they pushed that back, so.
okay. Okay,
But yeah, I have a little, being a supervisor is a lot different position. And I've learned a lot so far, and I'm hoping to learn more. But we've had some guys come in after they read the paper, and I don't know how to. I don't want to make you guys mad, but some of the comments really hurts our morale once in a while.
What's that?
So, I mean, the guys are doing a good job. I hate to see them get knocked down, so.
well, the comments that you're hearing from the commission are actually being just simply, we're the messenger
I
from the
mean, I
constituents.
understand that,
So,
because like when I took the supervisor position, I had to change my talk a lot. Because I came in.
well, in your position you do.
Yeah.
In our position, we're responsible financially
I'm-
and.
Yeah, I'm not trying to,
everything.
I'm just saying there's some times like, man,
Well,
one word just ruined the day for some guys.
I think,
And
enough
that,
said.
because Jesse's getting things turned around to me. Things are going pretty good.
And I
Now
respect
he's
your
not here.
opinion, but that's just your opinion.
It's just an opinion. I just wanted to, I don't want to
And
fuel anything. I just,
sometimes it sounds tough in the paper and they don't know the rest of the
well, that's the
conversation.
thing. They don't
before that.
understand,
Yeah,
the
rest of
workers don't
conversation, right,
totally
going
understand
on.
what all, because like when I was a worker,
You didn't,
oh, yeah, you know how it was.
right?
And being on this side where you see more of it,
Mhm.
it's
Both
different.
both sides.
It's a little different, so.
I appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks. And I just
Keep it up.
Hope you guys can help us get things straightened out.
We will.
We're getting there, so, one day at a time, right? So, thanks a lot.
Yep.
Thank you, Jim.
Have a good day.
Hopefully Jesse's back next week.
Yes, yes, sir, you may come back up, we have some time, so
All right.
it worked out perfect.
I talked to Brian about the one fine that was issued to a local trucker, And he did confirm he was unloaded on his way home at the end of the day,
Okay.
to answer that question. And it was one of the hype trucks. He thought it was Darren, but he wasn't 100% sure on the name.
But I wasn't 100% sure either, so I would make a motion then that we go ahead and waive that fine due to the fact that it was unloaded. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do I need to phrase that differently? To waive the fine from Darren Pike? I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the fine would be paid by the company.
Well, it'll be paid by the company, but he's the one that
He
was
was
in
the one
violation.
that he was the one that had the violation.
Right, so I'm asking to waive his fine, yes.
I
Okay, so
second
you
that.
second it. Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye?
Aye. Also tell your men, thank you for doing a good job of watching that, or whatever happened, that was a good job. And, you know, no offense to him in any way, this is just something that we're doing, but appreciate him doing a job.
I appreciate that. I'll let him know.
And I will also tell you, Brian is on it, and he was well aware of that. And he is doing an excellent job, but he also felt too that maybe there was a little wiggle room here to be a little bit more accommodating.
Right.
And so actually, it stems from Brian's, knowledge and professionalism.
Very good. And yeah, that's what he told me on the phone, is working on some other wind farms in
Yeah.
other counties. They said this is a pretty typical practice to allow the locals some flexibility. So, very good. He's a good guy.
Yes, he
Appreciate the
is.
feedback.
He's doing an awesome job.
Good.
Fair,
Glad to hear it.
competent. Love it.
Excellent.
Thank you,
Thank
John.
you.
Appreciate it all. Have a good day.
You too. And thank you for coming down.
You're very welcome.
Good to see
I
you
always
again.
enjoy coming to Marion County. Beautiful place.
Kind of dry right now.
It's a little dry, as most of us are.
Yeah,
It's good for wheat harvest, so they're getting rolling already, looks like.
they are. Yes.
All right, thank you much.
Bye-bye. So is Bud out there? Does anybody see Bud?
Yeah,
Bud.
we're here.
Well, come on in.
We're talking. We can talk to Dutch.
That's fine.
He's busy talking today.
In your packets, you all did have the tonnage reports and all of that, so.
Thank you.
See that John busted in front of me?
Yes.
You took a slap, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll be darned.
John and I went to school together.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So
good.
we've known each other for a long time. So,
But you had to part ways, and one go one way and one go the other
well,
way.
always.
Everything
Yeah,
good?
we always have that, so. All right, so, I think you're looking for an update.
Yeah, I'm anxious.
All right. Well, what I have today for you is what I call ugly pictures. All right. Not in the fact that they're like it's bad. It's my drawings and sketches, so we're in the process of everything. Well, the first thing that we've done is we are working on certificate of survey, so we know what we're dealing with. Here's the site.
Can you see?
So our surveyors were out a couple weeks ago, and drafters have been working on it, etc. We've had, as part of that fee, as we started working on the area here, we found, and they marked utilities, etc. There's some underground utilities that they didn't mark size, but we know that there's a big electrical line in there. So we went down here to the title company and asked them to put in easements or anything they may find in that area, so we know what we're dealing with. So when we ask them to relocate their lines, that they're not telling us, well, we have an easement there, etc. So that's kind of what we've been working on. Okay. And we received that information on Friday from the title company, a letter, etc. There's no easements except for what are marked on this drawing, is my understanding. Okay.
Let me ask you one other question.
Sure.
Is this West Star or is this a City of Marion?
That would be city.
Okay.
So at least that's what we discussed, right?
Yeah, it comes from the transfer
Okay.
deal underground to the pole that feeds.
Oh, this is our,
No, this is the city's fee. They didn't go overhead over to the pole, they went underground to
but
the
it's to
pole.
serve our facility.
No,
No.
no, it
This
serves.
goes directly out to
Okay.
the power line.
Okay, good. Oh, it's a power line fee.
Right.
Okay,
It's a
excuse me.
power line fee.
I see.
Right.
So that's the
Okay.
big thing we've been working on, okay? And so now we get down to the ugly pictures, okay? So this is in the process I know, see, I see that.
I like that though. See,
I figured all the pink, right?
No, I think that's good. I do that a lot of times in my work, is different colors highlights, and at a glance you can see what you're doing.
For engineers and contractors, sometimes, we get caught up in this is what you build, and so I color. This is really just hand sketches that I put together. We've actually started working, we've hired Evergreen Design Build out of Emporia to help us with the buildings and put together some building cost estimates, et cetera. So that way, when we get ready to bid it, and I told them, look, we're hiring you, it's part of that fee that we've already put together, so we can get you cost estimates so we know what the next step will be, and making sure that all of my numbers are correct that we've put together already. And so the pink is really where all the pavement is going to be located within. Currently there's pavement here, and this is oriented right, so north is towards me. And so this pink and a lot of this is already here to this point here. And so we're expanding this existing little wall that's here as of right now. We're going to remove that little wall, and we're going to give you some more room to back down in there. And this will be on the west side. And then, as we discussed before, is possibly taking that floor, and as we work on that area in there, we're going to raise that interior floor up a little bit so we can get rid of some of those issues that we're having with when we push trash, etc. So it's not so far down. And again, preliminary.
The floor on the pit.
Floor on the pit. That is correct. They have some issues with as the trucks come up too, and so in that area on the south side, you come in and we put a header across there and raise that up a little bit. In there too.
The ramp won't be as steep that way.
Good.
And then this entire area now, this line that's here is that current retaining wall, and then this is that drive that comes up to the existing building area. And so we'll raise this blue area here will become the new tipping floor, and then the green area will become the new pit area. And then we've already looked at it to where in between the two, we will actually remove that wall between the two areas. And so these two will be the same height. Those two tipping floors will be the same height. And that way they don't have to, there was discussion about making that tipping floor a little bit wider so they don't have the issue with pushing trash, etc. Well, we decided we'll just take that wall out in between there. It looks like there was a very big open space before.
Could have been.
And so from at least the way the joints are and the material that's in there, we'll just put a header up top. We're just really carrying a little bit of roof load, and that way they can go back and forth between there.
Nice.
Yeah, you have 60 foot instead of 30 on each side.
So that way, the discussion was if somebody comes in and they've got a little bit of trash, or they've got recycling, which is, trash can go one side, or even if it's a smaller vehicle, etc., that they're wanting to do, they've got a couple bags of trash and they got mostly recyclables. Then that way they can do either side. They can go either way. So that's the idea there. We've got about 20 feet in between the two. That's what this pink area is in there. For storage, and
That's the pit.
this right here is the pit.
So the green.
The green is the pit, and so again, coming down
Okay.
and then coming back up in that area. The blue lines are where we anticipate, or there's existing retaining walls. We will have to extend this one out a little bit just so we can decrease this slope a little bit. But again, it's really your guys that are going in and out of there.
Yeah.
So we don't have that issue, but we widen that area in there so we don't have to worry about, we're going from more like 12 feet where it's really tight to more like 15 feet, 16 feet in that area, so we're backing up through there. And we'll build a new retaining wall in there. And we're looking at stackable blocks right now instead of they've got the heavy blocks, not the, not the big poured concrete ones, but something that, I'm not saying that they're the prettiest thing, but at least they're a stacked block. Bigger than the Keystones. They're like this, but they're just filled with gravel. So that's what we're initially looking at. And then again, pull out here, and then they'll match up in this area here. We've got an area, this pink area in between, that'll be gravel, is what we're anticipating right now. We've had a discussion either it's a storage area or it's something that, we can have people come through and dump trash, etc. There may be a dumpster down there, but we haven't figured out grades on how that works yet. And so that's something we haven't discussed or finalized yet. The orange areas, they may be limited a little bit, but we're anticipating that as we do this, we're going to pour some concrete in front of the doors just to help keep rocks and everything else out. That'll make it easier for maintenance. Some of this will be options as we get into, here's our price. We want to do this or this, and so we'll put some of those options in there that, okay, we don't really have to have this, but we want to get you a price to do this. So, and then around, so this yellow area that's here will become the new shop area here. It will be, the elevation of that will be approximately 6 foot lower than the tipping floor. Okay. And just because of the grades that sit there, and it will be, right now we've got that anticipated, we haven't done final layout on that, but it'll be about 36 by 36, about what that size of the shop is, and that way you can, one of the things that we discussed was being able to pull your big tractor trailer in and be able to work on it, put it in there, and that way, in the wintertime, the guys are not laying on the ground trying to work on stuff and maintain things, etc. And then in front of that, we would have a place for the pickup to pull and another door that the skid steer and stuff can be pulled in there. So, and then we're working on heating options for that room. We looked at probably as an option, probably a very good option. We've done one just like this up in Clay Center, and they did a heated floor in there, and they love it. Their electric bills went way down in the winter time, and they're not really using their forced heat at all. So very rare. So that's an option there. And then this little red space, it's about a 20 by 20 office, which will include a bathroom and some office space, etc. And that could decrease a little bit. We did discuss a small space in the existing area between the two buildings that would become where they'd have tickets and it'd be heated pool and stuff like that, just so they can have their computer in there. And so if we do that, it would decrease the size of the office area. So that's kind of where we're at. We haven't formalized anything, but as part of this process, we anticipate we're probably 3 weeks out before we have our kind of that end, and that would put us right at that 60 days. But again, it's working with the contractor and stuff like that, and trying to figure out, okay, here's kind of what we told you in budget wise, and this is what we initially anticipated. This is where we're at. Here's some other options for you guys, and all that stuff. You come back and get back to you.
So you're thinking about 3 weeks?
Yeah, about 3 weeks or so. Some of it we were delayed a little bit from the survey. The survey crew had gotten everything done, and then how that works with vacations and everything else that was going on, and waiting on information from somebody else. We're probably a week behind of what I want to be, but we'll catch up.
Do you have any of these maps in a smaller version? Like top size?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that one's going with me.
Okay.
So,
That's very good.
yes, I scanned those. I apologize for the colors they're working on. They're scanning.
No, I think the colors are
Now I'm
excellent.
talking about on that.
Oh, on that one?
Yeah.
On the little one?
Yeah. You'll obviously the stand's not that great, but yes, those
Oh,
are,
okay.
those, I figured you guys would wanna see a smaller one to do a thing on.
Yeah. Thank you. I don't know if they want one or not, they say.
But the new
Do
pit
you
will
want
be a
one of
pull-through.
Yes,
Okay. no,
yes, it will.
Bud, did you order, have we ordered a new trailer?
Yes.
Did we go the extra 50?
It's 50.
And the others are 45s.
No, yeah. Let me look at it. I was thinking it's 50. Yeah, the ones we have right now, and it might be,
On a time frame, so you'll bring us about 3 weeks, and then when would you think, providing everything is a go, when would we get started on actually? Do you
I would-
have that in mind?
I would assume that, that would be, we'd be right around the 1st of July. So then, once we get to go ahead and do all the final plans, it'd probably take us about 3 months or so to get all of the rest of the plans put together, and then you guys could bid it out, which would be about 30 days. So you're at 4 months. So then you're at, so you're looking at November, December start time.
The first phase would be to strengthen up the floor that we have, or not?
Actually, the first phase would be to, there's just so much other stuff that needs to be done. We'll probably look at tearing down the building and start to get the new tipping floor, everything done. The floor, from what I've looked at right now, yes, it needs some help, but it can withstand a few months. And then, once we get the new tipping floor, then we can start pushing,
Okay.
things over to the new tipping floor. And then, of course, then at that time, we'll take a lot of load off of
Of the
the
existing floor.
existing floor. And then from there, from that point, we'll start doing a little bit of upgrades just to save that floor. I've already had a couple of calls from folks that do this all the time, that want to come out and want to be able to resurface that existing floor for you and not call them back just because they're not ready for that.
I see. Okay.
So,
Just curious.
yeah, sure.
Very good.
Sounds great to me so far.
I appreciate it.
Looks good. Love the
Yeah.
colors.
Again, I kind of giggle. I told them, I said, we got some ugly pictures, but it's just part of that process is to start coloring in things and.
These are the nicer pictures, actually. I mean, some of them have new colors. They are really hard to read.
Well, and I agree. It's urgent for highlighters and different colors this
Are
morning.
you done with this big one?
Yes.
That one I'd like to keep, and then you guys can keep the 11 by 17. So
Thank you.
you
this
guys-
one you want?
Yes, that's the one.
And I get it.
And you get that one. So I'm leaving that survey as it sits right now, with Bud, and then, there should be a signed survey that we'll send over to you here soon. That'll have any of that information that we received from the title company on there, and that way you guys will have a.
Okay.
All right?
Perfect.
Any other
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you.
We're good? We're
We're good.
Moving
happy
forward.
so far?
Move forward.
All right,
So
good.
I've got a few things I need to talk to them about.
Okay.
With you, unless you're in a hurry, so.
I'll wait for you.
Okay. We've been thinking if the possibility of having a storage unit of some sort down there for our tools, so we have tools available while this is going on, because our tool shack is going to disappear if this goes about. One thing I have found is a storage container down here across from Webster's. Wally Ross owns it. He wants $3,500 for it delivered. And then this morning, the guys down there saw on Facebook where somebody in Newton has a full-size ambulance for sale for $1,900, and it's got shelving and everything in there that would work great for a tool crib. But just wondered if I could do some checking and maybe proceed on trying to get some, or you want to wait until we...
Wouldn't the storage container be larger?
It would be larger. There's no shelves in it, you know.
Right.
Now, we're not going to be able to store our air compressor and stuff.
Yeah, you're
in
just
that.
talking about small tools.
Yeah, we're just, that's in the tool room that's down there at the northeast corner of the shop area, you know.
It's not something you have to drive something into.
No, it's just something that we could have our tools handy. You know, if we need to do something, our welder and stuff could be in there and stuff, you know, so we can wheel it into the existing tipping floor area.
You're talking about an ambulance, you're just talking about the box, or?
No, they got the whole thing.
The truck and
Trash
everything?
is in the hall, they say it runs, so.
So you can drive it.
I have no.
Hang on a second here.
Yeah.
We may be delivered a new ambulance here just shortly. I don't know which one's leaving. I mean, I think it's in late June or July, I think we're supposed to get it.
But don't we need the old one for trade-in or something? I mean, isn't that one
I
too?
don't think there's no trade on it.
Did we ever discuss
I
that?
don't think there's no trade on it. I think it's ours till we get rid of it. I'd have to check, but I'm just saying.
Well, I was wondering about that.
There may be one, Bud, that's
Okay.
already available that, you know, just a matter of taking the stuff out of it.
Right, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'll wait then, so.
I think I would talk to him.
I'd like to know if there was trade-in on it. I mean, I'm sure somebody knows that.
Yeah, Ed would know, but
Yeah.
I don't think there was, but.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, for the weed department, I need to buy some more Milestone. It's the same price no matter where you buy it. It's $277 a gallon. Our last bid we did, I had one of my vendors get a little bit upset because he didn't get anything more than what he did. And I told him, I said, well, you weren't the low bidder, so, you know, and so, you know, I'm just looking for another vendor now, so, I mean, I'm still keeping him in mind. But I'd like to buy 20 gallons, it'd be $5,540 for 20 gallons of Milestone. That's in the 2.5 gallon jugs. And I don't want to buy too much of it because what I still have on hand was on hand when I took over the department. And I think I got 7.5 gallons left of it. And I can't remember how much was on hand when I took over. It goes in spurts. It goes, everybody wants it and then nobody wants it, you know. So, but I'd like to have more than that on hand in case somebody, you know, decides they need more than the 7.5.
You're saying you want to buy how many, 50 gallons?
20.
20.
20 gallons.
Gallons.
Do you sell it by the container?
2.5 gallon jug or the quart. We have both of them on hand.
Or a
The
quart?
quart is $70.75 a quart, and then the 2.5 gallon jug is $277 per gallon. So that makes it 600.
What do you use that on mostly?
Anything.
Anything?
Anything except Sarisa or Johnson grass. It'll take care of musk thistle, bindweed. A lot of guys love it for the musk thistles because it's got a 90-day residual to it. So it's almost as good as Tordon 22K, but not quite. The only thing is you don't need a license to buy the Milestone. So,
Budget, put it in it. Yeah, but in the budget.
Well, I see no reason why you can't buy it. He needs it.
You'll probably be carrying over quite a bit though, wouldn't you? I mean, you're gonna get toward the end of musk thistle season.
but then if
Unless it starts raining.
yeah, but I mean, it can be used, like I said, on bindweed and stuff, and a lot of guys are starting to take care of the bindweed too now.
Will it kill everything, period? Or does it kills all or not?
No, it doesn't kill grass, doesn't hurt the grass. In fact, I gave Mike some to use around the courthouse here this year, because he had a lot of weeds that he was trying, and gave him the little walk-behind sprayer, the miser they call it, and he sprayed, and I mean, it did a good job on the weeds here. But as far as noxious weeds, yeah, everything except for the Cerisa, Lestadiza, and the Johnson grass and those.
Correct me on this. Did I read somewhere that on the musk thistles, they're actually like a 2 or 3 year plant?
2.
2. Okay, and don't they also recommend that you spray then in the fall?
Mm-hmm. That's when you kill them the
That's
easiest.
when the best.
That's when the rosettes come, and when they're most viable to the spray. And the only thing is you can't convince somebody to spray until they see that head popping up, and they go, oh, I got musk thistle, you know. But a lot of people do fall spray if they know they've got it. The weed law has been changed, effective July 1st. They put it in there that if have flowers at the end of the spray season in the spring, you will be forced to fall spray, no questions asked.
Awesome.
So they're trying to get a hold on things and stuff.
Have we been spraying any right of ways for musk thistle?
We have very little. If we do it, we go out and chop them.
Because I was just down on 150th south of Hillsborough the other day going west.
Yeah,
There's some 6-footers growing along there, right up against the side of the road.
right. So, we're trying to take care of them as we can, yeah. You
Yeah, I noticed that. We'd already gone down with the mower, so.
know. Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, we are getting spraying that and stuff.
Did you want to do the
So,
action too?
the question the question is Hannah's who authorized 20 gallons of milestone?
Yeah.
Milestone.
Is that like a pallet?
No, that's just, there's 5 gallon in each box, so it'll be 4 boxes that we come in.
So I have a motion to authorize the purchase of 20 gallons. I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion to authorize Bud to purchase 20 gallons of the milestone. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Randy. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
That stuff is pricey.
Yeah.
Yes, but you don't use very much of it. You know, you use, most cases it's minute.
Do you have to mix that with that basil oil too, or just water?
Water and a surfactant if, you know, if you want it to stick, so. So anyway, that's all I have then.
Okay. Well, that's good.
And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bud.
Thank you, Bud.
Unless you guys have something for me.
Doing a good job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
How you gonna figure this 50-foot trailer? I mean,
Yeah.
it's, when we do this, we gotta figure what's
It's
going
gonna
on for
fit.
50 foot.
Right, yeah. And they were talking, I've been talking with the guys down there, and we're thinking about taking the new one for recycle and trying to keep it recycle and take the other 3 for the trash.
Oh.
Yeah, and we can utilize that way, but it'll be
Usable.
usable. The new one, you know, that way if we do keep buying new trailers and making them longer, well then it'll be, you know, able to do that, so. Right. Yeah, I'm keeping that in mind, so.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
Thanks.
Have a good day, Bud.
Yep.
Prairie View 2019 budget allocation request. The ladies are up. Somebody has, the speaker has the hot seat. Yes. We like to hear every word. Morning. Nice to meet you.
Linda's a member of our Community Advisory Committee. One of our licensing requirements and just really good practice is that we have representatives from our individual counties who serve in an advisory capacity to the board of directors. So we have community input, and that advisory committee, and you may already know this, includes participation by consumers, individuals who are receiving services, as well as parents or guardians of children who are in services. So that is a really valuable perspective to us. I just brought an extra handout that wasn't part of what we submitted in advance. This afternoon, I'm going to be in Heston attending the dedication of the memorial for the Excel shooting that happened in 2016. And not to presume to compare Harvey County to Marion County, but there were a lot of lessons learned for us out of that experience. And there have been a lot of homicides in Harvey County in the last couple of years, and law enforcement there will tell us that every single one of them had a mental health or addictions or substance use component. And it just makes me realize, again, how important it is to provide earlier intervention or even preventive services rather than coming in after the fact and providing crisis services and responding to the aftermath of tragedy. If we can dedicate enough dollars to be available to engage in some of those awareness, education, early intervention, and prevention services, those would be dollars well spent. So this handout that I just shared on the front side talks about the number of people in Marion County who are affected by mental illness. That's a national statistic. It's about 20 in 100. And in Marion County, we provide services to 9 in 100. That means that 11 people that likely have a mental illness or an addictions disorder are not receiving services. Now, my statistics just reflect Prairie View, so there could be folks in need of treatment who are receiving that from another provider. But as a community mental health center, that's not even half of the folks who could benefit from services. And that tells me that we need to continue to increase our penetration rate, if you want to think about it that way. Gives you a couple of other indicators there about suicide. And granted, suicide is an extreme act that results from mental illness, and there are a lot of other manifestations. Someone who has an addictions disorder or a mental illness, their relationships are impacted, the status of their family, their ability to participate in education or employment. Their housing is likely at risk if they have a severe mental illness, and their financial condition overall. So those are a lot of indicators that affect quality of life, just to underscore again the importance of responding to mental illness and addictions disorders. On the other side of this sheet is an overview of the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, or ACEs. You've probably heard about that from folks who work with children, or especially folks who work in education. And now I believe every district in the state administers this ACEs study to their children to try to identify those adverse childhood experiences. And it's a very basic questionnaire, and some of the aspects of that are included here. And then the higher the score, the more likely it is that that child, as they age through life, would use alcohol or abuse alcohol, developing even an addictions disorder, that they would use tobacco, that they would have an unhealthy dependence or use of prescription drugs, that they would attempt suicide, experience depression, have a sleep disturbance, engage in all kinds of high-risk behaviors, and have complications related to pregnancy. So those, again, are all indicators that would affect their quality of life, and also likely place burdens on our public health and community safety symptoms. Now, this study is geared toward children because of the developing brain. A child is much more affected by a traumatic experience, but all of us are affected by trauma. If we experience tragedy or witness or a victim of a traumatic event, that's likely going to affect our health and our mental health going forward. So this is just kind of a perspective getter, I guess, for the importance of addressing mental illness and addiction issues in our communities. Unless you have questions or comments about that, I want to turn to the document that you all received in advance.
I do have a question on you. I'm kind of really interested in the suicide. It just seems like you hear about suicide more and more and more. And so you were, if I heard you correctly, were identifying it as part of the mental illness.
Yes.
Does that mean then, because I was under the impression, just I'm uneducated, but I thought, is depression mental illness?
Absolutely.
And how about worthlessness, doing self-worth? That's mental illness.
That would be, I would say, a common symptom or factor related to mental illness, a diagnosable mental illness, whether that's depression or even an anxiety disorder or some other mental health issue that affects someone's perceptions of reality in their own life experience.
So, okay, so that takes you back to perceptions,
Yes.
not reality.
Yes,
okay.
but I would say, and this is an overgeneralization, but when someone has difficulty distinguishing their perception from reality, that's a common symptom of a pretty acute mental illness. And that ability to think logically or
Realistically.
reasonably. Yes, yes.
No, thank you, you addressed that very well. Thank you.
Okay, good. So on the first page of your request, there at the bottom, it just talks about some of what we would hope to gain, the goals of preventing or early treatment of mental, emotional, and behavioral health disorders, overall productivity, educational outcomes, lower crime rates, stronger economies. These would be how a community is impacted. Lower healthcare costs, improved quality of life, increased lifespan, improved family life. And so those are the...
Do you have extras of those?
I do not.
Do you all have those?
Well, it was in our packet. I thought I'd made a copy of it, but I didn't. But I do have one.
Get it up there or not?
Sorry.
It's in our packet.
I didn't bring it
It's on the
along,
first
but I
page there.
remember looking at it. I just thought I had it, I was gonna follow along with you, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, good, okay.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
And that would
It's down there ways.
would be just generally the outcomes, according to the World Health Organization, that we are addressing in treatment of mental illness. Specific to Prairie View and Kansas, and this would be kind of perspective. I know Randy has heard me say this for several years, but over the past decade, Prairie View has experienced an $800,000 decrease in our state and federal funding at a time when costs are increasing, obviously, and the numbers of individuals that we serve is continuing to increase. Last year, we provided $1.3 million in uncompensated care. That's obviously greater than Marion County, but across our organization, just the importance, I guess, and the magnitude of the problem. At the bottom of this page, the last point there, and this is according to information that we received from the Kansas Association of Counties, Marion County ranks number 71 of 105 Kansas counties in its per capita funding.
Go up one more page, number 3. Or down, excuse me, I'm going the wrong way. 3. It's down at the bottom.
There you go.
Just add.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's an improvement over last year, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. In Marion County in 2017, Prairie View served 1,160 patients. That's about 9% of the population. So that goes back to the number on this handout that talks about penetration rate. Of those 1,160, 602 were uninsured or underinsured, and they met the income eligibility guidelines. And those are based on the federal poverty level that establishes whether someone is eligible to benefit from the sliding fee scale. And that's specifically how our county dollars are used to offset that. So the cost of the unreimbursed portion of serving those 602 individuals was almost $311,000. That's about $516 per person as an episode of care. So someone without insurance who is receiving sliding fee scale services in Marion County would be a cost of about $500 per person, to give you an idea of what that would be. And if you think about when you see your primary care provider or receive some kind of emergency room services and what those costs are, that maybe helps you kind of put that in perspective. Continuing then, that crisis services section, and this is across our tri-county area. So for Harvey, Marion, and McPherson counties last year, we provided nearly 3,000 episodes of crisis services. That means individuals who walk in to one of our locations, or when we send master's level licensed clinicians out into the community to provide crisis services, some kind of crisis intervention or crisis stabilization. Sometimes an emergency department calls us, law enforcement may request that, or other medical or healthcare providers in the community may seek us out when they're interacting with someone in crisis. And that's a 20% increase over last year, and that's a number that's continuing to go up, but 20% was a little bigger jump than we've experienced in the last few years. Our crisis line, that 800 number, receives about 125 calls a week, and those are always answered by a master's level clinician, and that's 24/7 coverage. The next section there identifies one of our primary functions, and this is a statutory requirement of a community mental health center, is to screen someone for admission to a state mental health hospital. Last year we completed 353 screens, and that's about a 10% increase over the prior year. And just so you understand, 353 screens in a year, probably 60 to 70% of the time, those individuals are uninsured. So it's likely if this is someone that has Blue Cross insurance and they are needing hospitalization, and by definition that means they're suicidal, they are homicidal, or they are acutely psychotic to the point that they're not safe and they can't care for themselves.
What did you say percent was on that?
It's about 67
That does not have it.
of that population, someone being screened for a state hospital, so well over half. 67% are uninsured, and about 60% of them, we as the mental health provider are meeting them for the first time. I was in a meeting with our community partners, law enforcement, healthcare providers, emergency responders, again across our Tri-County area, and I was sharing those statistics, and the law enforcement officers were laughing, saying, Jesse, you may be meeting them for the first time, but we've been getting acquainted with them for a while. So our conversation, and this meeting was for the purpose of developing a grant proposal to submit to a funder, looking for dollars that we could use for just that purpose, to have a closer collaboration with law enforcement and emergency responders. Now, what if we had a way to identify those folks earlier on? So before they are in an emergency room or in an ambulance or somewhere in the community with law enforcement, if we could identify that they're experiencing mental health needs, some of these individuals, people in the community, our first responders, know that they are deteriorating or that they need help. And if they had a way to refer them to us or share information about that need so that we could reach out to them more proactively. Maybe they have been our patient in the past, maybe they're not aware that we exist or they don't know how to access those services. But what if we could be proactive enough to begin to treat their mental illness before it escalates to the point of being suicidal or homicidal or, walking down a highway without appropriate clothing, thinking that they're going to California. I'm not making this up. These are the kinds of things that happen. So being able to respond to the emergencies as we are required to do really takes all the resources that we have available. And if we're able to find charitable funding or increased county dollars to intervene earlier, we could have a much greater impact and be able to prevent some of those extreme situations instead of just treating the crisis or the emergency after the trauma has occurred. So those are some of the ways that we hope to use not only these public dollars, but charitable dollars that we're able to obtain from other sources.
May I ask you a question?
Please.
Is there laws, I'm thinking that there are laws that prevent family members or just anybody, like if I know, let's say a cousin or somebody that has maybe tendencies, I don't think I have any resource actually legally to commit them or enforce them and to get treatment or anything like that. So when you talk about first responders, that tells me something's already happened. So,
Yes.
I'm asking you, what can we do, or how do we do this? Or is there some sort of a group or something for people to identify this and maybe approach legislation or something like that to get some of this changed?
And there are some things that are changing through legislation, and part of what I would share with you and that I share with family members or concerned friends sometimes when they call and say, you know, Jesse, I'm really concerned about Linda. I think she may hurt herself, or I fear for the safety of her family. Can't you do something? I can't tell that caller anything, but I can listen. And if Linda is known to the mental health provider, that information could be shared with her therapist or her clinician. A healthcare provider cannot share information, but we can receive information. And so I would encourage you, if you're concerned about a friend or a family member or someone in the community, to share that information with their healthcare provider, or encourage them to talk to their primary care doctor, or talk to a mental health provider, or call Prairie View or some other mental health provider who could help them. Just being aware of the resource and having the conversation, expressing your concern can accomplish a lot. And even say, you know, I see that you're not coming to work as regularly, or I see a change in your appearance, or you're losing weight, or you might want to not want to tell them that they're gaining weight. That's always a little tricky. But expressing concern based on what you observe and sharing information with healthcare providers can help them be more sensitive or more observant when they're interacting with Linda. So when she comes in for her well-woman check, her doctor might know or screen her about mental health or depression or anxiety or substance use or something like that. Having the conversation is really important.
But I would think that would go just a little bit deeper in so much as somehow we would have to get training out there to people to know what to look for.
Can you see my next point?
I've been wanting to
Two of
say
the
this too.
things that we're doing, and what we would like to do more of, is provide that kind of training. Mental health first aid is an international evidence-based practice to train people in the community, the general public, to recognize, to identify signs and symptoms of mental illness and help them have a conversation. It's about talking with the person and letting them know you care, encouraging them and helping them know how to access resources that are available in the community through their pastor, their healthcare provider, a mental health provider. It includes a lot of information about the signs and symptoms of the most prevalent mental illness and substance use disorders, and there's role play activities about how to have the conversation. Prairie View has certified trainers, and we often have grants available to be able to make that training available to community members at very little or even no cost to them. In fact, we have done a series of trainings in Peabody that was funded through a grant and invited the public to come. Another newer training is called ASSIST, Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. Now, the mental health first aid is an 8-hour course, so that's a significant investment of time. The ASSIST training is 2 8-hour days, but there's a shorter version of that. And again, this one's focused on suicide. It's called the Suicide Talk. It can be done as little as 60 up to 90 minutes. Great for school staff and healthcare providers. Prairie View also does training specifically for our first responders based on what their needs are. You know, some law enforcement departments have crisis intervention teams, so they have CIT trained officers, and so that gives them a certain level of knowledge. But if they're not able to invest in that for their department, they can ask us to come and talk about de-escalation, or how to tell the difference between someone being high and someone being psychotic or deluded, and how to respond in a situation like that. So those are all requests that we're open to, and those are the ways that we would like to be able to use our county and some of our state dollars so that we can intervene earlier in that cycle. But that kind of community training, especially for law enforcement, other first responders and healthcare providers, the people who work as volunteers in the community, teachers in the schools, folks in the faith community really can benefit from this training. So we really like to provide those trainings. We need some help in terms of resources, whether it's county or charitable dollars, to be able to do that. But those are important interventions that make our response more effective and just make our community stronger. Great question.
And I know some of the reasons why it is so tough for family members to have those rights is because you can take families that have maybe a little dysfunction or something, and Uncle Joe has a gun over here, and I'm mad at Uncle Joe, so I'm gonna call and say he's nuts, you know, and then you get a little bit of, I mean, there's a lot of where you could cross the line there and ruin somebody.
Yes. And
Because I
years
read a lot
ago,
about that too.
years ago, family members could take their loved one to a state hospital or a private hospital and describe their, make a case that this person was insane and they could be hospitalized. They even called those patients inmates and might have been detained for weeks, months, or even years. And today's due process requirements and the expectation to demonstrate medical necessity for a hospitalization is certainly a change from a few decades ago. The other piece that I wanted to mention to your earlier question, this last year the legislature passed the Crisis Intervention Act, which is new in Kansas and gives law enforcement or certain healthcare providers, not necessarily qualified mental health professionals, the ability to detain someone in a crisis intervention facility, so very specific kind of institution designed as a safe environment with appropriate staff to provide that level of care. But to detain someone or order them to a crisis intervention facility for up to 72 hours with the belief that within that time the person would either stabilize and be safe enough to be returned to the community, or they would go through a court commitment process to involuntarily hospitalize them at an appropriate setting. So that's new legislation. What's missing in Kansas right now is any of those crisis intervention facilities. In fact, the regulations to license those are still being written. But there's a provision based on strong lobbying from the law enforcement community to have an alternative like that, just to meet the needs of a number of folks who experience that kind of crisis.
Jesse, I had a question. You were talking about faith-based community. You know, in Marion County, being a rural county, a lot of these individuals end up in front of one of the pastors.
Yes.
Is there any collaboration with the ministerial associations?
We have a representative from the Ministerial Alliance who's part of our advisory committee. And so we meet regularly, but we also do a series of trainings and luncheons to provide resources and some intervention skills to members of clergy and volunteers from the faith community, recognizing just the importance of that connection and helping us all share information about resources that are available across our communities, recognizing that they're not sufficient. Prairie View has staff that go regularly to homeless shelters, to groups that are provided by other substance use providers, just making sure, distributing our crisis cards so folks can call that 800 number if they experience crisis for themselves or someone they care about. But that community collaboration is really essential. We are all under-resourced, and unless we work together to get as much mileage as we can out of what we have, we're just really fighting an uphill battle. But yes, we do strive to communicate individually and as a group with the ministerial alliances in all of our counties. At the bottom of page 6, that last paragraph talks about the average per capita funding for mental health services across Kansas. That's the data that I was referencing earlier. So the average is $7.60, which is 14 cents over the prior year. It's just creeping up. It's not keeping up with the cuts at the state or federal funding or with inflation, but it is continuing to move up. Prairie View's per capita giving from Marion County last year was $5.37, which is also an increase over the year before. So I include that just for your perspective. And as you can imagine, across Kansas, there's a very wide range of the level of support from the county to the community mental health center. Any questions about that?
The only question I've got is, I used to be in law enforcement, and we've had such a tough time getting into when we come across a patient. And it's tough for that law enforcement to get to the judge, to get through the system, to get to you.
Yes.
And it seemed like, and I just wanted, I've been out of it now for 15, 16 years, at least, more than that, maybe, almost 20. But I just wondered, is anything happening with that, to get, the ease to get to you?
I truly hope so. I mean, we want to be immediately responsive, and by our CMHC licensing requirements and our contract with the state, we have a certain number of hours to respond to a request for a screen or a crisis call. And I would say we virtually always respond within that time. But sometimes when we respond to that, this may be someone who we can't screen right now because their blood alcohol is too high, or they're under the influence of another substance, and neither a medical professional nor a judge will accept the results of a mental health evaluation if someone is under the influence of any substance. So sometimes that takes some time. That's an inconvenience if we're waiting for someone to sober up so that they can be evaluated, especially if they are violent or aggressive or really adversarial during that time. There are also times when maybe someone doesn't meet the criteria, that medical necessity that I mentioned earlier. If they don't require hospitalization, they're not a danger to themselves or others, so they could be treated in an outpatient capacity. And maybe that person says, I don't want anything to do with that, there's nothing wrong with me. So if they can't be involuntarily detained and they're not agreeable to treatment, then we're all in a difficult situation. And sometimes there's no place for that person to go. Another thing that happens periodically, and I know it has happened in Marion County, we may come to screen someone for admission to a state mental health hospital. They may be in Marion County, but if their home county is somewhere else, they have a different county of responsibility, then they wouldn't be hospitalized at Larned. They would need to be hospitalized at Osawatomie, and they're still under a moratorium, not accepting voluntary admissions at all, and for involuntary, there's a waiting list and often a delay of several days. So if you have someone who is suicidal, homicidal, aggressive, violent, they need to be hospitalized, but the hospital isn't accepting them, and they're here in Marion County, likely in your jail or in a hospital, that's a significant burden, and unfortunately, afraid you can't fix that. The judge even is hard pressed to know what to do in a situation like that. So those are some of the extreme circumstances, but the ones that we remember because they're so problematic for everyone.
And that actually did happen.
Yeah.
Within,
No doubt about it, but at that time, when you get out here and you gotta do something with this patient, because you have a situation.
Yes.
And it helped if they've been in your facility before. Seems
Yes.
like, you do something about it, some of that. But it's tough for the officer to deal with.
Well, to keep the patient safe, keep law enforcement safe, other healthcare providers. We have nurses and doctors and mental health workers who are assaulted and sometimes seriously injured by patients who aren't able to think rationally or control their own behaviors. They're truly dangerous situations, which is why when I talk about community safety, I'm not exaggerating. That's the reality.
I agree with you.
So it says here on your flyer that Kansas suicide rate is 21% higher than the national average. Why is that? What's wrong with Kansas?
I get that question a lot, and I don't know that I can answer it. I have a couple thoughts. One, we know that the the suicide rate is higher in more rural areas. I think some of that has to do with a lack of access to mental health or other intervention services. I also, and this is a personal bias, I think it's really hard to compare one state to another because our reporting expectations and requirements are different. I believe in Kansas we have been pretty progressive at identifying and appropriately reporting suicides. I think we're advanced in that way because we recognize it's an indicator that we need to track and we need to improve that. But other states or municipalities may not be as open to calling a suicide even when that's the indication. And so I think that does affect the data.
So I have another one here. It says that there are 9 in 100 people in Marion County receive mental treatment, leaving 11 out of 100 untreated.
Yes.
That means we have a lot of mentally people running around here in Marion County. How do you...
Well, and understand that diagnosable mental illness can be a continuum. Here, you have someone who needs inpatient care. They're suicidal, they're homicidal, they're unable to distinguish reality, they're psychotic. Here, you may have the person who says, I'm not myself. I may be drinking a little too much, starting to use prescriptions inappropriately. I can't face the world, so I'm not going to work today. Or when I'm at work, I have trouble concentrating, or my energy level is low, and so I'm not as productive as I could be. Or I'm having some physical health issues that are really as a result of my mental illness. This may be someone who has frequent emergency room visits because they can't catch their breath or their heart is racing and they fear they're having a heart attack, but in fact it's anxiety or it's a panic attack. And there are a lot of folks who have a diagnosable mental illness who would benefit greatly from treatment, but they're not receiving treatment and maybe they don't even realize that this is a mental health issue, not a physical health issue. And sadly, there's still a significant stigma. You know, if somebody needs off work to go have their eyes checked, or it's time for their well woman exam, or they need their colonoscopy, they'll tell their employer, I need this day off because I need to take care of this medical issue. It's harder for people to say to their colleagues or to their employer, oh, I have depression and I need to go and see my psychiatrist for medication management, or my family's really having a hard time with my child's special needs and so we're participating in family therapy. If they're embarrassed or they worry that their employment or their status may be affected if they disclose that they're...
I can see that. And finally, my last question, I'm done, is do you have, and you might have addressed it might went over my head, but what about people who have experienced a family member who committed suicide? A lot of times those are perfectly healthy, normal people. Now this happened to them, and now their life is in can because
It's one of
they
these
can't get into it.
traumas that affects us. That absolutely is. And you know, anytime we experience a loss of job, the empty nest, that takes some adjustment, and not everybody has the coping skills or the resiliency to be able to deal with that. But when it's an unexpected traumatic death with all the emotional complications like suicide has, that takes a serious toll on a family, and hopefully they're involved with someone to help them deal with those mental health issues, just to safeguard. And that's a significant risk factor for anyone who's experienced a suicide of a family member or a close friend. Just having that experience. When our crisis clinicians are responding to a crisis call, one of the early questions they ask is about suicide of someone close to them. And when they can list a number of friends or people in their family who have died by suicide, that increases the risk for them significantly. That's a big risk factor, and we all need to pay attention to that. Part of the reason that we worry so much about that copycat, especially in young populations, teenagers or children, are so impressionable that when someone in their peer group dies by suicide, we need to be monitoring them a lot more closely because the risk goes up significantly when it happens.
Sad, very
It's
sad.
extremely sad, frightening.
I have no more questions, I'm
How
sorry.
much, is there any impact on the opioid crisis on these numbers?
I would say maybe. If so, we would just be beginning to experience that in Kansas. When income levels are higher, opioid abuse is more prevalent for us. Medical providers and law enforcement will say meth and marijuana are much greater risks for us in south central Kansas than opioids are right now.
And alcohol.
Especially, and absolutely alcohol. Well, you can put tobacco in there too.
Yes, you
But especially with the lower income populations that are already at higher risk because of those other social factors.
Because, you know, you see some of the articles on the news, and a lot of that's coming out of West Virginia, and some of those, and those are a lot lower income states than Kansas.
True, very true.
I mean, we're an over-medicated society, the way it is.
Part of the worry, I guess, for mental health providers here is that a lot of the federal dollars are being focused on opioid exclusively, when we still need dollars for meth and marijuana and alcohol. And so that's of some concern. We're watching that pretty closely.
So,
And you all know my history in Marion County. Well, I've just met Diane, so she probably doesn't, but the other two of you do. And I cannot stress strongly enough how important it is to provide mental, excuse me, I'm not choking up. I'm to provide, just choking, yes. To provide mental health services and to receive the support that you guys have so generously provided in the past. And are you interested in the mental health first aid training? Would that be something you'd like to help support in Marion County for any group that you can think of that might benefit from it?
Yeah, I mean,
I think it would be
that's-
great. If there's some way that we could support that.
Well, another thought is that you provide the alcohol tax dollars to FACT, and that funding is to be used for substance abuse prevention, and they have that funding available, which is channeled through you, and I'm just saying that would be an appropriate source to obtain a little bit of help. That we need some additional besides that, but that would be a way of assisting if you would.
Would you, with your knowledge and your knowledge, would you think that the youth would be where we would focus, or would it be the young adult?
I actually think the mental health first aid, probably if we do one, and our initial one in Marion County, it might be more appropriate to target the adults who interact with a variety of ages.
But there is, the youth mental health
Right,
first
there
aid
is
is taught to adults who work with youth. And for that purpose, youth extends up through college age. I mean, that really encompasses young adults. And just from teaching both versions of that to college faculty and staff, the youth mental health first aid is more appropriate even for the college population than adult. So I would kind of lean in that direction, I think.
To provide the youth mental health first aid, because it's also applicable.
And the
Across the
youth
board.
mental health first aid has a little bit more emphasis on substance use than the adult mental health first aid does.
And the alcohol tax dollars would probably be more appropriate for the youth mental health first aid too, to tell you the truth. So I'd be willing to help organize that if that was something that you all would want to do in cooperation with Prairie View and FACT.
You know, part of the challenge with that is, say, we want to offer that to teachers or law enforcement, then, you know, substitute teachers
Right.
or coverage overtime
That's
for
part of the
law
money would have to
enforcement
go.
so they can participate. But sometimes we schedule it so that they can do 4 2-hour blocks instead of 8 hours, and can get a little bit more coverage that way.
I'd rather see the dollars used in a proactive manner rather than a reactive manner.
Well, and I think we need to do both, because we're already obviously overspending. I mean, there's more need than the dollars can cover, so there's nothing left there to take away. And that's why we put a lot of energy into applying for grants to do some of that prevention work. But increased dollars targeted for that, I think, would be a really good investment.
Boy, you guys have a monumental task. And I don't know why this keeps going back, because with all these accelerated numbers in mental health, it just comes back to me that our society is in the tank. And in my opinion, I'm thinking this is also a contributing factor, because especially with our young kids, I mean, everything is okay, or there's no structure. I don't know, it's just
There's a lot of stress on
Yeah, a
our
lot of
families, and I think they don't have the resources or coping skills. And when we can, again, intervene earlier and help build some of that resiliency in the community, it's a better investment. We can't stop doing the crisis response and move all the dollars over here, because the tragedies don't stop. Those emergencies still happen, and we do have to treat the outcomes of that. But being able to invest a little bit more on the front end and try to slow down that growth is the long-term solution.
And we have to do it together. It's a collaborative effort, and all of the resources need to be coordinated and partnering with Prairie View in order to do that.
I don't know the number of dollars that we've got in either one of those, but we would have to shift them, and we would have to get people to get some of it already sort of acclimated that we're going to take some of that money if we was to do something, you know, out of some of the dollars.
Might even be some grants or something.
There could be, you know.
And the ministerial alliances might even, I mean, you know how I am about pulling stuff together, so.
I know you're good at it. I would just think that maybe we could.
So we can talk.
Okay.
And grants are big things. I mean, I'm learning a lot about grants. There's a gazillion dollars out there if you know where to go get it. Yeah, and
Well, that's part of where my comment came from about the opioid, that sometimes how a grant can be used. For example, Prairie View received a grant for tobacco treatment and recovery, tobacco cessation programs, even provide some of the medication, support groups, incentives, education for participants. But we're not allowed to use those grant dollars
They're specific.
for anyone
Yeah.
under 18.
Right, well,
Yeah.
all grants
You
are
know,
specific.
you have to
Yeah.
fit the criteria, and it's quite a matchmaking game, but
But I would think in this realm of all the different, even though you have different lines or different forms of your crisis here and stuff, there's got to be grants out there for all. There's got to be. I just can't believe that they would leave one behind somewhere.
well, and part of the way that Prairie View is able to provide $1.3 million in uncompensated care is we do grant writing and other fundraising and have the church connection that allows us to access more resources. But even then, we
Sure.
finished last year at a loss. You know, it's not profitable to be a not-for-profit in the mental health business.
Yeah, but it would be a bigger loss if you wouldn't have had these grants. I mean,
Oh, absolutely,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, we're on the same page. Well, it's very sad, but very educational.
Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
time and
It's nice
attention.
to
How many
We
years have you been
appreciate
doing
your
this?
support. 13.
13, okay. I was thinking it was longer than that.
Do you have a card? You guys have a card?
And I'm retired, so I don't even use cards anymore.
What?
Everybody knows Linda.
Everybody but me?
We'll have to get together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. Have a good
Jesse?
day. Thank you.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Take care.
Be good.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Nice to
See
see
you,
you
Lynn.
again.
Okay, so moving on now, we have Harvey Marion CDDO, budget allocation request. And who is here representing that?
Ready for CDD?
Yes, yes. Be nice to have a lot of money to give to everybody. wouldn't it? Come on in.
Hi, Liz.
speaker will sit right there.
Pardon?
The speaker will sit there.
Okay, sure.
You can sit it.
Both of you can. Come
Here,
on, both of you.
we have more
Jump right- we got
chairs
plenty-
too. Yeah, we have more chairs.
We got two
We got
chairs.
plenty of
Here,
chairs.
we've
Derek,
got
we
3
got-
chairs.
Liz, I was wondering why Jared was here a while ago. I forgot his new position that he has.
I thought you just come to join us.
I'm not here
How's it feel?
representing economic development.
No, no, no.
For the record.
That has been, you make that clear, huh?
Yeah.
You learn fast. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm Elizabeth Schmidt. I'm the Executive Director of Harvey-Marion County CDDO. And nice to meet you, Commissioner Novak. And
Okay.
Commissioner Becker and Commissioner Dolphy. We've known each other a long time.
Quite a while, yes.
So, we're here first to say thank you. We really appreciate the support that we receive from Marion County. And if some of you know our history, you know that we started this is our 11th year, and we were founded by joint resolution of the 2 counties. I believe Randy was part of that transition process in getting us going. And through the years, we've had tremendous support from our counties in terms of support with goodwill, with appointing board members, with interest in serving on our board. We've had it's been really good to have that local county support, and so we're grateful for that.
One quick moment there, it's tip of the sea.
Yes.
2 of them here that's been on the board. I don't know, Jared, you've been probably the latest. You've been about 3 years?
Oh, no.
2 years?
It'll be 6.
6?
Next.
And
6, boy.
yeah, Deidre has 1 more year for
Good to know,
6,
yeah.
and Dan is completing his
Sixth, that's right.
6th year. So, and then Jared, how far are you?
I'm on year 3.
You're in year 3, yes, so.
Time flies.
It does, it does, yeah.
He's not getting any younger.
Yeah. And so if you take a look at our, okay,
Where do you
so,
want to be, Mrs.?
okay, so this document that you're seeing now, this is our local operating budget for our office, for what we do. And I provided this in here so you can see how we use our county funds. We have several different revenue streams. We have assessments that we do. That's one of the things we're required to do as a CDDO. And then we get CDDO administrative dollars from state of Kansas, and that's the state federal match. And then we have funds from our 2 counties that go in that 3rd column. And then that last one is what we call state aid. That's also from state of Kansas. And so we use all of our CDDO administration, and then we use some of our county funds then to complete our operational expenses. And all of the rest of our county funds and all of our state aid is flowed through into the 2nd page in what we call our local finance plan. And that's clear in the bottom, that bottom section there. So you can see all of our state aid dollars go there, and then county monies as well. There's 126, 550 of county. That also goes into that local finance plan. And then what we use that for, that line that says discretionary funded direct supports, that's paying for caregivers to take care of a person with a disability, child or adult. And then that direct financial support, that goes to a family here in Marion County to offset their cost of bringing their adult child to a pickup point to catch the route to get services in Newton. And then that next line is the respite care program, Trinity Heights Respite Care, that provides respite care for children from birth to age 16 in both of our counties. and we pay, with those dollars, we pay for up to 28 hours a month of respite care, so the family caregivers can have respite from home. The early intervention, that's the Tiny K, the Birth to 3 programs in each county, in Hardy County and Marion County. The self-advocacy, what that is we have a local group of adults that's learning about how to be self-advocates, how to stand up for themselves and learn to express what's important to them. And there is an annual conference every year in Topeka in June, and those dollars provide scholarships for people to go to that conference and their support staff, if they need support staff. And then that last line is transportation, and that is to go to offset the cost of the expenses for providing transportation to people who receive services, because it's really an unfunded mandate. You need to, transport a person from point A to point B to provide services, to get from a group home to a day program, to get from where they live to the grocery store, or to go shopping. But there really isn't anything that pays for that. So what we do is we use those dollars, as a subsidy to offset those expenses. Any questions about that part?
On the transportation, do you transport people like to doctor's offices and things like that? Or just around like grocery stores and things like that?
That also takes place, yes. And the people, the folks who do that would be the staff who provide the supports. And so it's not our office itself. We contract and subcontract with the service providers who do that. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, and there's also, for the people who have can care, which is most people, there is a way that you can set up transportation reimbursement through can care. It's called non-emergency medical transportation.
So like for chemotherapies and things like that?
Yeah.
There's actually a program like that, because I didn't know that there was.
Yeah, it's called non-emergency medical transportation.
I mean, other than just through our aging department, other than that.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if there's some, sometimes you have your elderly people, they might be widowed or whatever, widowers or something, and even though they have children, they're off doing their own thing, their own lives, different county, states, whatever, so they don't have anybody.
Yeah, right.
Really to
Right.
take them. I mean,
Right.
it's really I didn't know if through your organization if something like that was covered, or if you knew who covered it.
Yeah, so if people have Medicaid, there's a way Medicaid can pay for it. The problem is finding somebody to do it.
That's what I was
And
asking
so,
for.
so sometimes it's a matter of that the person who does it getting reimbursed. It's not, there isn't another system set up that does it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, then if the insurance,
Like the
that's
Amerigroup,
Medicaid,
United,
or
or Sunflower.
they have different stipulations, and you have to, whoever takes them can get their mileage reimbursed through that company, or through that insurance provider.
Okay, so it's not really an organization that does it, you could just find somebody to do it, and then they can
A
get
person
reimbursed, is
does
that
it,
what you're
yeah,
saying?
and they have to apply to get
Under that
reimbursed.
program.
Under that program.
Yeah.
There's a couple different ones.
Where's that
Yeah.
KDOT program that we belong to, but they're based out of Hutchinson, and they go all the way to Pratt, McPherson.
And what do they do?
We're like the long string out gets to Marion County. We're just on the tail of it, back into the tail of the dog. I mean, we're just out there. And it's so far, it's cost prohibitive because it's all located out of McPherson, but that's run by KDOT.
And see, it just seems so odd to me that of all the services of transportation, if you have somebody with chemotherapy or whatever, it would be dialysis or whatever, I mean, they need to get there.
They need to get there.
And we don't seem to have anything that really covers that. And I didn't know through all these different organizations if there was a branch or a feeder or something that we're missing.
At one time, did Newton Medical come up and pick up some people for chemotherapy?
Yeah, Yeah, that was way back, and that was a very short-lived program. I don't think they could make
I
it.
vaguely remember it.
No, we tried coordinating where we could get like doctor's appointments. On one day, we'd all take people to Newton for all doctor's appointments, and then one day to Wichita. But we used so many hospitals in Peoria, Laredo,
Oh, yeah, everywhere.
were scattered all over, and it was just totally unworkable. Because some people would have an 8 o'clock in the morning, and somebody at 1600 in the evening. Well, everybody ended up waiting. It was not a good system. And the KDOT one it's so far away from us, it was hard to coordinate with them. They had the little buses and everything, but it was so far. Some of the people want to be 6, 7, 8 hours just on a vehicle going right along.
Chairman Novak, if you could give me your email, I could email you some more information about
I'll
that.
give you my card then.
Yeah, let's do that,
Yeah.
let's do that, yeah, thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
How many providers in Harvey and Marion County now that you're dealing with through the office?
Yeah, yes. We have, ResCare Newton is the largest provider. Then we have Equiventure Farms, and the name comes from the name of their organization in Topeka that originally started as a horse farm. So that's the history of the name, but there aren't horses in the program in Newton. Let's see. And then we have Skill, Southeast Kansas Independent Living Resource Center. And then we're affiliated with Flint Hills Services in El Dorado for a person who lives in Burns and goes to El Dorado for some day service. And then in Marion County, we have several people who live in Marion County and they go to MCDS in person for day service, so we're affiliated with them also.
But actually, in Marion County, we have no providers in person.
Yeah, there's one person that gets services from Equiventure. There isn't a group setting location here. ResCare used to support a number of people in apartments in Hillsborough, and that's no longer the case.
There is a bus that comes up and picks up
Yes.
several people,
Yes,
at least in the western part of the county,
yes,
every
that's right,
day.
that's right, yes.
I see that blue stem pace, whatever it is.
Oh, okay.
That's one of the problems we have in Marion County. Parents having to haul their kids all the time, so far away, McPherson or Newton.
Yeah.
And we lost the dentist over that, Dr. Duska.
Right.
It was too much for them, and they finally, so we lost the dentist because there just were no services. Everything was, you had to haul somebody somewhere.
So are those just adults then, that I'm guessing, that are being picked up and taken to, like a employment or training or something?
It would be, that would be adults. Yeah. And then there are, I'm going to talk about the page, talking about things happening in Marion County. One thing that I do want to highlight,
Which one are you in?
I'm moving to the last page of this now, where it talks about the outcomes. Well, there you go, there, where it's the last one under those accountability and outcomes. The Tabor College Project Search Program, because I want to talk about that because that's something that is getting going here that is a good thing that's kind of grown on its own with, committed families and local partnerships, and it's really something to celebrate. It's a success. It's a Marion County success story of vision and collaboration, and for people with developmental disabilities. And we're not the charged leader on it. We're a supporting player in it. And I think it started with parents and with teachers. In the Marion County Special Ed Co-op, there were families that wanted to see something for their kids here in Marion County when they finished school. Didn't want them to have to be bused somewhere else or move somewhere else. And so there were teachers that were interested in being responsive to that, applied for a Rural Routes to Employment grant, and that helped fuel that vision. And then they approached the Northview Endowment Foundation for a grant to start up a project search program. And you can Google project search. It started in Cincinnati, Ohio, by a nurse administrator there at Cincinnati Children's Hospital, and she was looking at jobs the hospital had a tough time filling, and who their patient base was, and wanting what their employee base to match their patient base better, and had the vision of hiring people with developmental disabilities to do some of these jobs. So she figured out a way that works, and this model is highly successful. What you do is you get a partner business, and here the partner business provide, it's internships, it's not paid work, but intern experience, and it's an intense immersion learning kind of thing where, you know, the interns, they go there just as if they were an employee and learn work, and they do rotations in 3 different departments. And the transformation that happens over that 9 months is just phenomenal. You know, I mean, the soft skills people learn that you don't learn if you're in a sheltered workshop, you know, or in a classroom, you know, but you learn what's expected at work, you know, and how to be on time and how to get along with other people and how to listen to your supervisor. And so this first year, there were 3 interns in the program. There was 1 student and 2 adults, and there was 100% successful employment outcomes for those individuals. And so, you know, how we support that is I serve on the steering committee, and we also provide county funds to pay for the adult tuition for the adults in the program. And those who are students, it's covered, their cost is covered by their IEP. It's part of their school life. And so we're hoping that this model and supporting this model is going to help, you know, meet what parents are looking for, so that their sons and daughters with disabilities can have adult lives in Marion County, meaningful, productive adult lives, and they don't have to get on a bus and go to another county or move to get their needs met.
This cost that you have here, that's what you've spent for each student, or?
Each intern, yeah.
Each intern costs that?
Yeah, for the adults, yeah.
Through Tabor College?
Yes. And the college community has really embraced this program as a mission of what they're about, and they also, I mean, they've gone above and beyond. They have students who are mentors, volunteer mentors to the interns, and they, you know, kind of consider the interns part of their student body, and, you know, they give them student ID cards, and they eat in the cafeteria and things like that. So it's been it's an exciting and positive thing to celebrate.
What's your outlook for next year's class? Do you think that will happen again?
Oh, yeah. They already have 6 interns.
Lydia said to get 7.
7, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
7.
There's a 7th now.
Try to get in there
Okay.
now.
Okay, yeah, so, yeah. So I jumped ahead because that ties into being responsive to those concerns that families have.
So under that program,
Yeah.
you'll provide funding for 1?
So we fund the adults in the program. There were 2 last year. Okay, yeah. So we were looking at funding 1 for next year. Yeah, this is a
Yeah,
mistake.
that's what it says.
We did 2. There were 2. Yeah. We're looking at funding 1 next year.
So if another one would apply, we could cover them? Or-
If we would be, where it comes out of that line that's discretionary funded direct supports, and we would look at what our commitments are there, and whether we have room to fund another.
Because I mean, it looks to me like that program may just continue to grow.
That's a priority.
I mean,
It's
I
a
don't know.
priority.
I don't know what Tabor's vision it is, but I mean, it's already going to be more this coming year than last.
Yes.
Yeah, President Glanzer has just been an awesome asset to this whole entire endeavor with his
Yes.
involvement and stuff.
With his involvement,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a great deal.
Yeah, see, that's where the problem was, because when we say graduated from school or aged out of school, that's when everything stopped for them. That's where our gap was, where they started having to be hauled somewhere now.
Yeah,
Keeps them off the government program that puts them in
absolutely.
job employment.
Yeah, and so all, all three interns have employment. One is gonna work at the St. Luke's Hospital, one is gonna work at Terry College, and one is gonna work at the Hillsborough Senior Center.
Very good.
Win-win, good program.
Yeah, win-win, win-win-win. And that's how we need to think anymore, I mean, that's the reality we're in, we've gotta find ways to work together to figure out how to
That's
do.
a lot better than putting them on a bus and shipping them to
Shipping them somewhere
in
else.
person or
Yeah.
wherever.
Yeah, and just, that was so far away, they couldn't check on their kids. I mean, it was just a bad situation.
Yep.
So what would you like me to talk about next? What else is on this list is, it's Marion County. I tried to identify the outcomes for people who live in Marion County. So in terms of like new applications, we had 29 altogether, and there were 8 from Marion County. Part of what we do is quality assurance, and every quarter we do a random draw and do quality assurance visits. So this last year we did 16 for each quarter, and there were 2 who live in Marion County. And then with those discretionary dollars, we funded residential and day supports for 1 adult. And this adult had been on the waiting list for HCBS. Finally got the HCBS funding, so then that adult went on the HCBS program. Then when that happens, then we can use that money to serve someone else. That's how we do that. Let's see, then there were two students who were paying to have in-home personal care services, and one of them got the waiting list funds. So, and the waiting list, it's a 7-year wait. So, wow. Let's see. Then we paid for one child on the waiting list to have targeted case management. So if the child has CanCare, CanCare pays for that. But if they don't have CanCare, then there isn't a funding source for it. So we paid so that child could have case management.
An ugly number, there's no get on the waiting list
Waiting, we have, it's a 7-year waiting list?
Yes. We have 96 waiting.
Will they still be children by the time they get up?
Some of them aren't, no.
Yeah,
They get on the list, if you get on the list when you're 14, you're finishing special ed,
And the kind of help they need, you wonder how they're getting by, why they're waiting for the help to arrive. I mean, it's just,
And I wonder how they get there.
So,
Sad.
yeah, it is sad. It is sad. The state of Kansas overall, I have that overall number. Bring that with me. Overall, I can get you these exact numbers, but I don't have them with me. Overall in Kansas, there's I think the latest numbers are like 9,119 people getting services, getting to home and community-based CanCare funded services. And then there's 3,400 some that are on the waiting list. And they bring people off the waiting list, but there's more people being added than are coming off. So that waiting list number is growing too. And with our population demographics, those numbers are probably both going to keep getting bigger. So we're going to have to figure out different ways to do things to meet needs. And the smarter we can be and the more collaborative we can be, it's a win-win. So those are just kind of the realities that we live with. But the project search model, I think, is a really exciting development there.
I'd like to ask the commission I think you're asking for 65,000 again.
Yes, I'm asking to
But I'd
keep
like
it the same.
Yeah, I'd like the commission to think about this Tabor College thing here, because ever since I've been involved with this program and funding it it's always always ship our people to Harvey County, always ship them out.
Yeah.
We've got something started there apparently that seems to be working. I don't know, what percentage we could possibly do. You're looking at 1. So I'd just like the commission to take that in consideration for budget time. Maybe if we was to do anything at all, try putting some of the budget up for this Tabor College program here in our own county too. So, just an idea.
And you're asking at this time, do I see that there's someplace 65,000 for 2019? Is that?
Yeah.
That's what we're asking for.
Okay,
Which-
I thought I seen, oh, yeah, there I
Yes,
see it.
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm, okay.
So, thank you, Randy, for that suggestion.
Yeah.
We would appreciate that if you have room to do that. We know how difficult local county budgets are too. So, we're all in this together. So, if there's room, we would appreciate that. So,
Everything we ship out all the time. Bottom line would be great if we could get something.
We had a presentation over there, 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
3 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, on the Tabor College.
Okay.
And all these years of doing this kind of stuff, that is the best year I've ever felt about myself.
Good.
That's something really, because they had pictures of these kids. It was huge too. You could just see it. It was just huge.
Yeah.
It really made you feel good that, something positive in somebody's life that makes maybe when they have much choice or any options other than that.
If we have something successful in this program, in this county, this close, we need to embrace it.
We do.
They talked about, like at Tabor, they got a shirt and, a uniform and a name tag and a self-worth. I mean, it just ignited it.
They belong. I saw
Yeah,
them
they
all the
belong.
time, they just look
Yeah.
like regular employed men.
Well, that's just it.
There
That's
might be
just
somebody
it.
checking on them every once in a while,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
supervisor.
Yes, that's just it.
Like the
Yeah.
But they
athletic
were earning that,
department.
the game pass.
I'd like to oversee it.
But they were interacting with the students, I mean, it was kind
Yeah.
of like they became part of the student body, really.
Yeah, exactly what they reported.
And, yeah, you can't say enough about Tabor on what they did. They're the students, the mentors, the administration, they just bent over backwards. They had a lot of stuff going on there this year. And these guys didn't get slighted in the least bit. They were well taken care of.
And, some of these
Very
kids,
encouraging.
some of these were known to people over there and they embraced them.
Yes.
My wife taught one of them in school, and,
Wow.
he'd come by and check on them.
That's cool.
And special ed too, helping set up that Dr. Shepherd and his people over there. They were huge in getting this thing set up.
Yeah.
Did a lot of, got the grants and everything, did a lot of they were
We want to direct as much time and financial help as we can to that program.
Okay, do you have anything else?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Other than thank you.
Thank you.
Other than
Yes.
thank you. Yeah.
Well,
And next week's
so-
my last meeting, so we'll need
So
another one
we
for
will
July.
need
So you're not going to continue?
he's
I'm out.
completing
Two
his
retired.
Okay.
second, yeah.
We made it,
I'm
when we
term
set
limited
the
out.
Okay.
term limit for commissioners is 2 terms and then move on to another commissioner. So that's why I stepped out 6 years ago and he stepped in, so.
Well, I'm all for term limits, as we all know, so, see ya.
Solving a lot of problems.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
But I would,
At least change the conversation.
I
What's
would,
that?
I would like to be willing to put my name up for adoption again, I guess. Just put it that way.
You have to bring your own cookies, they don't
Okay,
furnish them.
they don't furnish cookies? Okay.
Not at all.
But I would
We are next.
be interested in going back on the board.
No, I
If
think
nobody
term
else
limits
wants
are excellent. They are. You get all kinds of fresh ideas and things, and I find that people really do want to volunteer, but a lot of times they don't have the opportunity because you've got people just stay forever and ever and ever and ever. And so, anyway, thank you for your service on it.
I learned that in the Navy, we got transferred every 3 years. I always thought that was stupid. It
Well,
wasn't.
you learn a whole lot more, didn't you?
You keep changing the mix,
Yeah.
new ideas,
Yes. That's
new ideas,
right.
and get people his age.
And that's what we gotta do.
Yeah.
That's our next generation, and
Unfortunately, they got jobs and kids and get
so
ball
did we
games.
though, so did we.
Yeah, and we didn't do it back then either. We waited till we got old and
Well,
over.
some.
Have a good day.
Well, yeah, have a good day, thank you.
Look forward to seeing one of you at the next
Thank you.
meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Have
thank
a
you.
great day. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you very
There you
much. Have a great day.
See you later.
Okay, so I assume Emma is out there. I can see her, so I'm sure she's out there. Hello, Emma.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. All right, I have a couple of things.
You just go with your order and then tell me how to get there.
Okay.
Just tell me what you need up
You
here.
know what,
That's fine.
since my applicant is here, I'll go ahead with the CUP application first, if that's okay?
Sure.
Okay, so the first thing I have is an application for a conditional use permit by Troy Pet for a scrap metal salvage operation.
Can you handle this one, please? Can you step outside and ask them to move down the hall a little bit, please?
Yeah, like all the way down.
Yeah, I just,
Is this the one, Emma?
Yes.
okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You're all right. Okay, so we had received this application in early April. It was actually a result, it was already in operation prior to submittal of the application. I received a call and gotten in touch with Mr. Het and received an application to bring it into compliance.
So you say you got a call?
Yeah, so anytime that there's a concern or a complaint, I do investigate those, and so this was a result of that. So as you can see, if you look at the pictures, this is our most recent aerial from, I believe this was from 2017. So as you can see, the operation had grown, and so that was why it was brought to my attention. So as I said, Mr. Het does have a scrap metal recycling operation, and he has been in business for a number of years. So at this point, we went out, met on site, and he kind of walked me through his process. He does have a very streamlined operation, in my opinion. He's got a set procedure in place for when he receives scrap items. A lot of times it's vehicles, and so he does have a disposal method for all the liquids, any of the chemicals. He actually has a license for dealing with the coolant. So he does have a very specific system in place that was actually detailed in his application. So that was one of the main concerns we wanted to address. Another thing that we typically address in these types of applications are proper screening and containment of the items. So he does have screening in place. He does have a fence up. That was actually suggested as one of the conditions to include in the permit is to maintain that screening, to maintain an adequate and consistent screening material along the perimeter. So that is something that we discussed at length during the planning commission meeting. The other question that kind of always comes up with these types of applications is use of the transportation system and the roadways there in the area. Where he's located, it's near 280th and Mustang, or about 5 miles east of Durham. So that location, he said the traffic increase as a result of the operation would be very minimal. The only outbound loads are typically done on an annual basis, and any incoming loads are done by him himself. He goes out and obtains the materials and brings them in most instances. So any increase in traffic would be very minimal. So we didn't find any concerns with that per se. So the main concerns or the main items we wish to address were just to adhere to that development plan. So these are actually the conditions for adherence to the development plan of record, which included kind of his process and his disposal and treatment and handling of the chemicals present. The second one was to maintain compliance with all the applicable federal, state, and local regulations. So he will be required to obtain a state permit for a salvage yard as well. That has to be done after zoning approval is granted by the local authorities. So he will need his conditional use permit in place prior to applying for that. It's actually a KDOT application. So that was the second condition, and then the third was the maintaining adequate and consistent screening. So with those conditions, it was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. That meeting was held on May 24th. We didn't have any outside concerns from the public prior to that hearing, and nor have we afterwards. So I think that he's established a reputable operation, and I know he's assisted in a lot of cleanup of properties in the area. So, like I said, he is present if you have any questions for him.
I don't have any questions for him. I'm just surprised that somebody would complain. I mean, he's out in the middle of nowhere. So I can't even imagine why anybody would have complained. And he always had the barrier around. I mean, it's been there for a long time.
I think the inquiry, and I can say when they are anonymous into my office, they remain anonymous. So I wasn't the one who actually took the call.
Okay.
So I can't even tell you I don't even know personally. So if the call is anonymous, it remains that way. I just know that there was an inquiry as to whether or not the operation was permitted. So.
Okay.
How long ago did you move out this way?
Oh boy, I moved there in, I think, 96 or 97.
96 is the
Okay, I was thinking 96. Well, my mind fails me
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. But you started then, didn't you? Sometime after that?
Slowly, yeah. You know how it is. You think I'll never get that big, but
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a fascination of mine for years. I always like tinkering with vehicles.
I know Troy does an invaluable service for Marion County, because if it weren't for Troy, we'd be littered with inoperable vehicles throughout this county. And that's a great service.
What is junk price now?
Went back down the other day. It was
Going up for a while.
It was going up. It was up to like 175, I think. It's back down to about 160. It moves just like all the other market prices do.
Any other questions by the commission?
No problem.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve resolution 2018-15, a resolution approving a conditional use permit to operate a scrap metal salvage business in the rural residential district generally located at 2792 Mustang, Tampa, Kansas, owned by Troy Head. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Kent. All in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Motion carries.
And Troy, I'll get you a copy of that resolution.
You guys done with me then?
We're done with you.
I'd like to stick around, but I think I'll leave.
All right. Have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, good man.
Thank you. Oops, I'm sorry.
My next item is, and it's actually in regards to a wastewater variance. So this property that is shown on the aerial on the screen, it's at 2250 Limestone. It's located on kind of the, I would say, the northwest side of the reservoir. This property in particular is very unique. It was actually found that the system was failing as a result of a requested real estate inspection. So this property is currently for sale, and the potential buyer has requested replacement of the system. So we actually met on site, myself and the buyer's agent, and then as well as the contractor, and looked into it a little bit. This property is actually accessible by easement only. And so we do have there's actually a small wooden bridge that's just a private bridge to access the property. So that being said, we've got some accessibility concerns as far as the system itself. So we're looking at a little bit unique system. But we also have constraints with the lot itself as far as placement of the system. So as you can see from the aerial, it's a little bit hard to tell. The structure to the west is the shed, but the home is located to the east, where the address point is located. So directly to the west of the home, there's a pond. So the system has to go to the east of the house. So the wastewater system has to be located in this area where I've mapped out the approximate area. Okay, so the width and the depth of that area where we can put a new system is pretty limited. and to meet those 100-foot setback requirements it's impossible. I mean, it's just not, we can't do it. And with the way that this lot is shaped and the particular, you know, just the specifics of this lot, there's no way to place the system anywhere else. So what I would like to request is a 30-foot setback variance on both the north and south sides. And that would be just for laterals. They do not want a lagoon. It would be strictly a septic system. But we are looking at a little bit different type of system simply because we can't get a load of rock in there over that bridge. We can't get a concrete tank over the bridge. There's no other way to access the property except this it's a little wooden bridge. We actually, upon inspection, we do ask that the tank be pumped. That's pretty standard when we inspect a septic system for a real estate inspection. And even the pumper was really, I mean, he went across it, but I don't think he wanted to.
So how will that be addressed going forward for future pumping?
They were able to access it. The only other possibility would be to obtain permission from the owner to the south, possibly. To the north, that wooded area is actually a waterway, so they can't access the property from the north at all. It would have to be from the south. And as you can see, there's actually 2 parcels that they would have to cross that are not owned by that property owner. So, you know, for personal use, and it's an easement, so as far as it's not a public road for us to really address the bridge itself. It's a lot that was created, I actually believe, based on the documentation prior to zoning, so it's not something that we had any ability to regulate at that time. So it exists as it is, and we're dealing with the way it was created.
That was my question, is how's this lines get like this, but it's created back in?
Yeah, this property has been, it's been this way, I believe, since the 70s. I can look at the deed here, but.
Access is through the blue, is the way it looks.
So access, we can't see it from this aerial. Access is to the west, so there's a driveway, and there's actually another house west of this one as well. So, yeah, both homes are accessible by this easement.
To our left then would be the west.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing a field to my left.
So the other house is.
So where's the access from this field? I guess I don't see it unless it's.
Down at the bottom maybe?
Yeah, so
Down
there's,
here?
Yeah,
along
right
that
there.
red
Yeah.
line, there's
Yeah.
a driveway that is an easement that is utilized by both this residence and then the residence to the west, off of Limestone.
So that's a long driveway though.
It is very long. It's very long. So the first time we actually went to this property, it took me to the wrong house, the first house. So.
And so they're happy with that situation, I guess, huh?
You know, I don't know that there's a good remedy for it at this point. I don't believe that any of the other property owners are willing to sell. So there is an easement in place, and that's what's been utilized since the lot was created.
Right?
Yeah.
It's right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, right on this side of so the big lake has caused, the reservoir's caused some of the reason why it's down.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So you need just verbal approval?
Yeah, I do need a motion just that we can have a 30-foot variance to the north and to the south for the laterals.
Okay. I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve a 30-foot variance for the north and the south for the in front of the lateral. Okay. Do I have a second?
I'd second.
Second by Randy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anything else, Emma?
I believe, is the letter I sent included in this as well? Okay. There is also a letter here. I met with Miss Slater. She lives just south of Peabody on Needle Road. Her property is outside of Peabody city limits, just barely. This property, I received a call complaining regarding just the visual aspect of the property. There were some concerns as far as I think the complaint actually stated junk. Okay. I met with her on site, and based on our observations at our meeting at that time, there were two main issues that I felt like needed to be addressed. The first is she does have a failing wastewater system. I'm currently working with Betty Richmond on the cost share program, so there's a non-point source solution, and we have that grant ongoing currently. So this is the application period. We're actually working together to try to have a second round of applications. So we had a large enough number of failing systems identified that she felt like we should submit a second round as well. I don't know that we'll get funding for that second round, but because we have such a large number of applicants, she felt like it was beneficial to demonstrate that to the state as well, that we do have the need here in Marion County. So I visited with Ms. Slater regarding that, that program, and so we are proceeding with that application currently. The second item, though, is the presence of more than our minimum of 3 inoperable vehicles. There were several vehicles on the property. I believe there are about 10. So I have photos and video with her. She does have a son who lives with her who I think kind of tinkers or handles those things. She's asked him to clean it up, and I will be meeting with her again at the end of this month. She does not want to proceed with the conditional use permit application. Her preference would be to clean up the property. So that being said, there will be action of some sort later this month, depending on the status of the property during our return visit. So that's where we're at.
So that's the only concern is the vehicle, as far as junk is just the vehicle.
Yeah, and then like I said, we have the failing wastewater system, and we're working to address that together. So.
Okay.
Maybe she should be referred to Mr. Head.
It's yeah. Were there any questions or comments on that one? Yeah.
Do you have any questions? Randy, any questions?
No, it's just what you said, Kent. There's a class act, and then here's somebody tinkering, and it creates a problem too. So, yeah, it's something. If people would at least put a fence up to hide their tinkering a little bit, I would feel quite better about it. I mean, well, I'm just saying, I just wonder, here's a person out there that's done it, for a big lot, so.
All right.
Tear it apart.
Well, and I can, you'll be copied on any updates. There are some secret letters. So.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda, we had Deb with Workforce One Agreement. Unfortunately, she had to leave because we were running behind schedule, and they will be scheduled for another day. So, is Ricky Roberts out there? And Matt?
Could we take 5?
Your time is up.
You need 5?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Craig.
Yeah.
Go ahead, take 5.
I'd rather ask than just leave.
Okay, well, we have 5 minutes, Lisa. We have
I'm not leaving.
pause to pause.
If you leave, I leave.
So, are you the speaker? You're the man.
All right.
Okay.
We just wanted, last spring, the NRES, which is kind of the environmental science, to get the environmental science dual major, to get that accreditation, have to take a class called the capstone class. And it's the last class in their coursework. What all the students do in that class is research projects. So that class is always looking for research projects that they can do related around environmental studies. Matt contacted the instructor up there, Sean Hutchins, and they agreed to take on our lake. So that's the history, and you all knew that. The class had 9 students in there, and so there was 9 students, and those 9 students were divided into 3 groups, and they were divided into 3 groups, and each of those 3 groups going in advance had a faculty advisor, and so each group took on a project. And so we can go through those here. The first of those projects was identifying, and you'll see as we go through all of the projects, they very much become related to each other. And I think that you'll be able to see that as we go through the information here. But one of the groups took on, I'm trying to identify sediment sources. Basically, that was looking at the area above the lake and looking at the sediment that comes into the lake with the water flow. Okay, so that's one. The second then was looking at the lake sediment and a water quality study. Lake sediment then is the sediment that is in the bottom of the lake. Okay, we'll get to how they did that in a few minutes, as well as looking at the water quality. And the third of the projects then is looking at the nutrient accumulation, the sedimentation loading, and the organic matter on water quality, i.e. What is in, i.e. really what's in the sediment and how that affects the water, okay, and how that affects the lake. So we'll start then. If we look at the nutrient accumulation, the organic matter, go ahead and advance it then. Largely what this group chose to do was they began by analyzing a lot of existing data that's been done at other bodies of water, okay, largely done by KDNHE, and they've looked at about 105 different bodies of water in the state, okay, and they look at the water quality, etc. of that, okay. This group also did some water sampling, and I want to be known that the water samples that they did were taken from the lake itself and not from the incoming water. That's important to note. And I want to make sure we note that is that the water that they test is the water that's in the lake, not the incoming water. Okay. Yeah, we can move it now. What this group then determined is that our lake is eutrophic. Okay. Now, I think that's not anything new to us. To be honest with you, we knew that. Okay. And if we want to, maybe to help us understand what does that mean, though, if we say our lake is eutrophic. Eutrophication, what does that mean? I guess the Ricky Roberts definition, you won't find this written in a textbook anywhere, Randy, so don't try to do it. But really what the Ricky Roberts definition means is that we got an overload of nutrients. An overload of nutrients causes some excessive plant growth in the body of water. It can be in any body of water, okay? And so you have this overload of nutrients, and nutrient, by those nutrients we're referring to basically is nitrogen and phosphorus, okay? So we have an overload of nutrients, and that overload of nutrients causes excessive plant growth. And then as those plants then would die out, they dissolve up the oxygen that's in the water, okay? So then we have water that becomes depleted of oxygen, okay? And that can cause other things we don't like, all right? That can cause fish kills, et cetera, because there's not enough oxygen in the water, all right?
And really what causes all of that is some excessive plant growth, which is caused by the nutrient level. Okay? We scientifically then, here are the levels of eutrophication. And it's designed by a scale called TSI, which stands for the Trophic State Index. All right? I'm not going to get into how it's calculated. It's pretty scientific, okay? And you can see then the different levels, the different trophic levels that are out there. The oligotrophic, measure slightly, fully, very eutrophic, and hyper eutrophic. Marion County Lake has a trophic TSI number of 56.39, and that means that our lake is fully eutrophic. All right. What is that telling us? We've got some nutrients in the lake. All right. Did we already know that? Yeah, we did. Okay. And so that tells us a little bit what we already knew, to be honest with you. And I think we already knew that much. Now we're going to try to focus on where the nutrients coming from, I guess. Okay, but there we go. Okay, move on then. Okay, the water sampling that they did, they pulled water samples from 4 sites. Those maps will tell you then where they took their water samples from. There was some additional samples done by other groups, as we'll get to in a few minutes. But that is where this group took their 4 samples from. Okay, so it spread out some. Okay, I'll go into that in what you see in there, and this is important to note, and I'm going to say it again later too. What they tested was the water. Okay. Now, what we learned out of that, the water is not polluted. I want to state that one more time. The water is not polluted. Okay, move on. Okay, another group then decided they wanted to look at the sediment. Okay, and they wanted to look at the sediment then that would be in the bottom of the lake. And what they chose to do though is where is that sediment coming from? So they went above the lake. All right. So they went above the lake then, and they were trying to identify the sedimentation from the tributaries in order to look at the erosion potential. As water runs, and as we know, water, as it runs, it's extremely powerful. And it will take with it whatever is in its way, okay, depending upon how strong the current is. One of the things that it will take with it as water runs through the tributaries is that it takes sediment with it. All right? So we wanted to look at then what sediment is coming into the lake. All right? So that's really what the purpose of this is. So they took some soil samples then basically above the lake, and you'll see the sites there is what's identified within those boxes. Okay, and once again now what they're doing is really they're taking soil samples, and we're trying to then determine, okay, so what class of soil, what's coming into the lake. Okay, you can move it again. There's just a picture of them, and they're actually in a stream bank at that point. They're not in a lake, that's in a stream bank is what it is. And they're pulling some soil samples. And what they're trying to do is we're trying to figure out what sediment, what soil is coming into the lake as the water runs. Okay? You can move again. The other piece of that then is we want to take a look at erosion. All right? And so to do that then, they did some leveling and some site leveling. Basically, what they're trying to establish here is a baseline, beginning at this point. Okay, where are we at? So as we have future rainfall events, how much erosion is taking place. Okay? But to figure out how much erosion is taking place, we have to start at some level. And that's what they're establishing. And so I'm going to call that a baseline. A baseline level in some of the stream banks above the lake. So far, so good? Okay. These are some pictures of stream banks. Now, we have a couple of problems with this. One, Kent, it's dry.
There's no water running through it.
There's no water running through there. I want to make that known. That becomes a problem. It still is a problem today that Diane and Lisa were discussing earlier. But anyway, we had a dry spring, guys. We had a dry spring. And the dates are noted on there. This work was done in April. In April, it's supposed to be wetter around here than what that was. But there was not much. Heck, there's not any water running. All right. So anyway, so there's just some pictures of some stream bank. Once again, what we're trying to do is get a baseline established, as so that when we do have some flow, that we can go back and look at how much erosion has taken place. All right. And then that can help us then to identify maybe some potential stream bank work to be done in the future in order to try to stabilize that erosion for those stream banks. Okay? Move on. Oops, move again. I guess I had a blank slide in there. So during the leveling process, as I said, we established an erosion baseline in the pastures above the lake. And then after we get more rainfall, hopefully we can try to identify some potential future projects as far as some stream bank work. That might be areas that like RAPS could step in then and help do some stream bank work.
We're not allowed to do stream banks.
You're not? I'm
No.
sorry. Okay.
Kansas Water Offices.
Okay.
And they just receive funds to be able to do that, so
Okay.
they do have that
They do that.
possibility.
Okay. So anyway, that would be what we might try to do with that information. Okay. And the big one, the lake sediment and the water study. This becomes the third of those groups. Okay, and then the third of those groups, they investigate the impact that sediments have on water quality and availability. Okay, for simplicity, when they say reservoir around here, we can get those confused. They're using the term interchangeably. Okay. But anyway, around here we like to separate the reservoir and the lake. So don't let that terminology confuse you. Okay, please don't. What we already know, influent water coming in. That's what influent water means. Is generally laden with sediments. As it brings in, as we talked about, it carries sediment with it. The sediment that comes in then can affect not only the water quality, but that it also affects the storage space within the water body. All right, i.e., you get too much sediment in there, you have less water. Okay, because you're taking out your water holding capacity. Okay. Nutrients then within the soil are washed into the reservoir. Okay. Causing an increase in nutrient load within the water. The increase in nutrient load can lead to the eutrophication or other water quality issues throughout the year. So once again, earlier, now you see how some of these studies get tied together. Okay, so we talked about earlier, what does eutrophication mean? It means we have an excess of nutrients. Okay, and how does that happen? All right. So anyway, the water samples that they took, this is a map of what they did. You'll see they took 12 different water and sediment samples. Okay? So not only did they test the quality of the water itself in each of those locations, but they also took sediment samples. So And so that's what this group did. And they chose to do that, and as you can see, it spread out over the entire body of the lake. Does everybody see that? And that's what that hopefully indicates. All right? So you have 12 samples, both water and sediment samples, i.e. then it becomes 24 samples. As those samples were sent into the lab. You're testing water and sediment mode. Okay. How in the world do you test sediment that's in the bottom of the lake, especially around the dead end where it's deep, right? And so anyway, our friends from KU helped us. And our friends from KU have a core sediment sampler. And so in those tubes, you will see in those tubes that tube is filled with sediment. That's not water, that's sediment. And that is the sediment pulled from the bottom of the lake, is what you see there. All right. So there's just two different pictures of one from Site 9, the other from Site 8. All right. So to do that, then you'll see that one in Site 9. You actually see they're in a boat. All right. So to do now, some of those sites are pretty shallow. You put on their waders, and we can wade out in them. Other parts you have to get out in the boat and go into the lake to get to the deeper parts of the lake and get that sediment. So anyway, so that's what those pictures show you anyway there. Okay, move on. All right. So when we do that, when we test that water as well as the sediment, all right, for oversimplification purposes, really what we're testing is for nutrients. And those are, what did we say earlier? Nitrogen and phosphorus. And that's what you'll see up there, the total N and the total P, or the total nitrogen. We measure that in parts per million for nitrogen and phosphorus. Okay? Okay, a whole lot of numbers there. All right. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Now, first of all, these are water quality numbers, not from the sediment. I want to make sure we all understand that. The numbers that we're looking at here are water numbers. They're not from the sediment. The sediment numbers have not been analyzed yet. All right. So here are the water numbers. Two things I want to point out. One is that all of the levels in the water for the phosphorus and the nitrogen are all acceptable. The numbers aren't too high. Okay? That's one thing I want to point out. Earlier, I pointed out to you that another group had done some water sampling, and I told you that the water quality was what? The water quality was good. I'm pointing out the same thing again. The water is not polluted. I do not believe the water is polluted. Now, I also want to point out, boy, it's hard for me not to get up. I don't want to do that. I apologize. And Tina, I'm not going to hit you in the head when I point here. Sample site 8. Sample site 8. All right. You will notice at sample site 8 that we have an accumulation going on. Somewhat in sample site 7, but more so in sample site 8, especially with phosphorus. Especially with phosphorus. Now, I'll try to make this understandable. Phosphorus. When phosphorus travels in the soil, all these things have an electrical charge to it. And because of that charge, phosphorus binds to that soil. When we apply phosphorus to anything, when we apply phosphorus to a crop, to our yard, or whatever it may be, when we apply phosphorus, and that phosphorus travels down in the soil, it gets caught in that soil and it doesn't move. Phosphorus doesn't move because chemically charged, it binds with that soil molecule. Okay? And so it stays with that soil. So as that soil moves, the phosphorus moves with it. the nitrogen has a different charge to it, and nitrogen will travel down throughout. So nitrogen doesn't travel quite as much with the soil as what phosphorus does. Okay, so the numbers, what I'm more concerned with, that I look at, I pay more attention to phosphorus numbers than I do nitrogen. Okay, and because that is, I know what's coming in with the sediment. All right. In Site 8, we have an accumulation of phosphorus. Now, if you go back to the map and where Site 8 is, it's up on the north end of the lake. And Isaac and Matt can help me out. That's up on the north end, and that's a shallow area, correct? I can't explain that, but I think I can explain it. It's a shallow area, and because of it, the sediment gets stirred up more easily. And so it's in that sediment is stirred up in the water more, all right? And that's why in those water, and once again, we're testing the water, not the sediment. These are water numbers, not sediment numbers. But in that shallow end, that sediment is stirred up in that water more easily because it's shallow. And that's what I think is going on. That's my own analysis, not their analysis, but I think that's what it is. I ran that by Matt. I think he would probably agree with that. But that's what kind of we come up with. So that's how I really explain that. But my point, if you look at those numbers are pretty good. Those numbers are pretty good. Okay, you can go on. Wildlife has been something that has been brought up around the lake. Is that true, Isaac? Yeah, I think so. And Isaac's predecessors have used to call me quite a little bit with these questions. And so anyway, so we also asked them to do some wildlife surveys. And so anyway, they did, this was, and you can see that this was done as basically as a drive around, and it was in the evening, and they started that at about 5:30 in the evening, okay? And they drove around, and they made some of these observations in those 8 different locations, all right? And yeah, you can move on, I'm sorry. I guess I'm not a great fisherman, I'll admit that. I guess I don't have the patience. I'm not a great fisherman. But anyway, this is a note. I put this in there because it was in there. But in his finger there is midge larvae, and that was in one of the sediment samples that they pulled. They found that midge larvae, and that is, in my opinion, I think that's a good thing because it's a diet of the fish. It's fish food is what it is. Okay, so that's probably a good thing. But anyway, so their point was that they found that midge larvae in a core sample, which would suggest to them that their presence would be throughout the lake. Okay, you can move on again. Here's from those 8 locations. Then you can see the different species of wildlife that they observed, and so I'm just pointing out then what species of wildlife that this group observed at each of those 8 locations, ranging anywhere from bald eagles to geese, etc. All right. So anyway, that's that's really what that would indicate. Okay. Yeah, you can move on. What hasn't been done, what has not been done, is the testing from the sediment samples. I'm anxious to see that.
Well,
We
yeah,
have raw data.
The raw data exists.
We have some raw data, and I don't want to share that because that data has not been analyzed yet, okay? I have seen some raw numbers from the sediment samples, and I was anxious to see that. The water sampling that was done by these groups, by the different groups, the water sampling that was done suggests to me that the water is not polluted. But we know that the lake is eutrophic. We know that we have an overload of nutrients, but yet the water quality is good. What does that suggest to me? The nutrients are there, but it's in the sediment itself. Okay? So the data that was not presented today would be the data from the sediment samples. Okay? In terms of future groups, in the fall semester, there will be 2 more groups that want to continue looking at this. Those groups will each have a different faculty advisor. The faculty advisor certainly weigh heavily on the projects that are selected because whatever their area of interest is. One of the faculty advisors in the next group is going to be from agronomy. I am hopeful that that advisor then will have an interest in looking at that sediment data. And that's what I'm hoping they will do. But I really can't tell them what to do, but that's what I'm hoping. Otherwise, the more work that needs to be done is there needs to be more water quality work done. But it needs to be done in a time of high flow. This spring, unfortunately, we never got there, as we all know. And it was dry, and I believe that more water quality work needs to be done on incoming water, not in the water that's in the lake, but incoming water, and during a time of high flow. And that will tell us what's in that water as it enters the lake. And I'd be interested in that is not in here. All of the water quality work that's been done to this point, those samples, were all taken from the lake itself, not from the water entering the lake. And so, and most scientists would tell you that data is very important, and they would tell you it's more valuable if it's done during a time of high flow, not during a time of minimal flow. And right now, all we've had is a time of minimal flow. Okay, and so I think that I'm hopeful that in the future that we'll be able to do both of those things, and I think that would probably give us some more information as well. And I'll let Matt weigh in here too. We went up when the groups made the presentations, Matt and Lisa and Isaac went with us as well, all 4 of us. We all 4 went up and listened to the presentations. I was impressed.
Yes.
I was very impressed. I really was. I was impressed by the work they did. I don't think that should surprise me in terms of the research, because there's a faculty advisor listed on all those, and those faculty advisors, when they're doing research, they take that pretty darn important. And so the work that they do, because it's going to get published, they want to make sure that's done right. And so I was impressed. All of the groups had to make trips down here. The amount of man hours put into that, I wouldn't know how many man hours put in if you take all of that combined, but it would be a significant number. And to be honest with you, what we've got into this thing right now, folks, we got $600 into this thing. $600. And I did want to point that out. And of the county money, it's actually $200 of the county money. And all of that money was spent on lab tests. Is what that was all spent on. We didn't have to pay anything for the use of equipment, or we didn't have to, of course, pay for any of the man hours that was put into that. $400 was put in through the RAPS project that was put in, and most of that was also for lab sampling. Some was for some
All of
mileage.
it was for lab sampling. Dale Ayler supplied the boat, his time and gas.
Yeah.
Matt was out there the entire time.
Yeah.
They donated that time.
Yeah.
So we've received a lot of data, more than we could ever possibly have gotten, more than I expected, for $628.44.
In the real world, what would you estimate that would have cost?
Thousands of dollars.
Let's say that we would try to pay a private engineering firm that could come in and would have done what was done here and to get those reports. I mean, I don't know what that would have cost, but if you say me it probably cost you $10,000, that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I don't know. I don't know for certain, but that wouldn't surprise me. It would be a considerable amount of money. Without question, it would have been several $1,000s to get what we got out of that. And is it done? Is it complete? No.
No, this is just the start.
It's a beginning. It's a start, okay? I want to point out that when we began this, when we proposed that we allowed them to come do this work anyway, I want to make note. The goal here is, I'm trying to think how to choose my words. We're not going to solve blue-green algae. Okay? Our goal is to come up with, to give you all tools to develop some kind of a management plan or how to manage the whole area around the lake. All right? Now, in the process of that, we might have some other ancillary benefits, such as blue-green algae. But I want to make note, that we're not going to solve blue-green algae. Okay? The other point that I've always stated to anybody that asks me, we didn't get into this problem overnight. And the solutions will not be overnight. That's important to note as well. Would you agree with all that, Matt?
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just, that is the reality, okay? So, that's what we have at this point. I don't know, questions or comments from the...
Matt needs to do what we're doing in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
so
we're hoping to get.
Dr. Hutchinson wanted me to relay that he is extremely grateful for you guys allowing them to do this. Ricky had mentioned that in the past they'd come up with projects. None of those projects had ever been real life. The professors had to come up with a problem for the students.
A pretend problem.
Yes, so these students are actually able to apply research to a real life situation. It's great for the students, it's working great for the course, and they are very excited to continue.
They want to keep doing this.
A couple of the lessons learned here from the first semester of doing this is they want to get the students out here sooner. So we went up for the first class of the course, gave a presentation about the lake. It wasn't April until the students were actually told, all right, go ahead and go down. So they did learn that we need to get these students down here sooner. The other one is that fall semesters are probably going to be better for water quality research if we need to do more of that, specifically because of the dryness. The fact that we had crystal clear water. Several of the professors could not believe how clean that lake was after the ice had come off. They said it was just incredibly clear, thought it was beautiful.
And the quality of the inflow water coming in at low was
Yeah.
drinking water quality.
Yeah, what was coming in. Everything they tested was drinking water or better. Except for, I believe, one parameter was just barely
Just a
over.
little bit.
And this is just running down the stream there at the slide.
Yep.
They do have two groups coming in. With that, we do have, as Ricky mentioned, professors who will be guiding them. One will be Colby Morbert. He's with the Department of Agronomy. The other will be Stacy Hutchinson.
She is with biological and agricultural engineering. So there will be some expertise that they will have that'll kind of limit the directions the students will be able to go. You know, we won't want someone from agronomy directing a wildlife research project.
Right.
With that, and working with Isaac, because he's been instrumental in guiding us and getting us where to go, we kind of want to figure out what directions you guys would like them to focus. We will go up for the first class again, present to the students, give them an idea of what the park is, the lake is, some of the past research, and give them some guidance on what we would like to see. So.
Do we need to ask permission also about if we're able to get the testing, the hobo?
No. Yeah.
Oh, well, we need to find out. So one of the things that we're looking at is right now, if we get a big rain, we have no way of knowing what the water quality is.
There's no class going on right now, so we've got nothing being monitored right now.
So we are, Lisa's been working with KDHE, we're talking with multiple people there. Dr. Hutchinson actually contacted him this morning, and he is going to look into some options. If you guys would be interested to put a water quality sampler out. It would actually pull samples, we'd be able to grab those, it'd test it, we'd get that data, it'd be a continuous monitor. Barring that, another option which Lisa researched and found, it's called hobo. It goes out there in the stream, it measures off of pressures, tells you what the flows are, do a cross section. That way if we do get a rainfall event, we can go out there, use a jar, get a grab sample. That sample is a shot in time of water quality. If you combine it with the data from the sensor that Lisa has found, that gives you sediment loading. So we've got water of this quality, we had this much come through. So now we know how much phosphorus, how much nitrogen went into the lake. So we'd be able to calculate those things.
At a particular time shot. The hobo is fairly inexpensive, which is exciting. The other thing that we were also told is if we wanted a permanent testing site, all we had to do was come up with $40,000 a year.
So we're hoping that Dr. Hutchinson may have a route to negate that 40,000 and find us one to be installed.
So we're looking
We
at
don't
other
know,
avenues.
but maybe. Yeah.
We're trying.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'll look the hobo route. Try that. 40,000 is a bit of a.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
But you harped on the $600 first.
Yeah. 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 I think that will.
That's well worth it.
Yeah.
The hobo's gonna be like 200, that's not
Yeah,
bad at all.
and then a data log.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it wouldn't
then
be bad at all.
That's something that RAPS can afford to be able to supply for that if we're able to get it done. So I don't see that as being a problem. The permanent testing site and the other testing instruments, I believe, we don't know this for sure, but I believe they were the ones that were used to do the original 9-element plan on the Red Reservoir when they started pulling in the information on that. So we think we might hopefully be able to get our hands on those instruments.
We're hoping.
We're hoping.
We're going to try. So let's keep. We're going to try.
So anyway, I think that it's important to probably, I think this is what the professors would want us to emphasize. Not to jump to too many conclusions yet. Their researchers are slow to do that. And that's something that we want. We live in a microwave society. We want an answer in 30 seconds. That's the society we live in. They would tell us to try not to jump to too many conclusions yet. And so I want to probably make that statement to everybody as well. But anyway, other questions that you all may have?
I have one question, but before I do that, I just want to tell you, I just love what you guys are doing. I mean, how awesome is it?
Thank you.
And I personally would support you guys just going right on doing.
All right.
I think you have to.
Right.
My opinion.
I appreciate that. I would concur with that sentiment, Diane.
Thank you. I mean,
Yeah.
awesome. My question to you is, you mentioned the raw data that's available, and you don't want to reveal that yet because it's not been deciphered yet. Would we have to wait till the fall to get those results, or do we expect them to come in?
We should probably have them analyzed first. So it's like saying it's hot outside. Okay, well, we know when it's hot outside. So you go to the surface of the sun and you measure it and it's 10,000 degrees. Well, that's pretty hot. Well, not for the surface of the sun. Well, we've got data that says the soil levels are this. Well, that looks pretty high.
Is it?
Is it high for a lake bed? We don't know.
Ah.
So that's why,
That's why it needs to be
If it was a-
analyzed with data.
when we saw it, I looked at Ricky and accidentally interrupted their presentation to go, can those be right? Because they were
His-
shocking. And
His
as we-
jaw dropped,
Yeah,
and it
Yeah.
wasn't, but it wasn't surprising to me, but I understand that through my office, I run a lot of soil samples through my office. I'm used to looking at what these numbers look like, phosphorus numbers look like. And it made
I
his
see
jaw drop.
cropland field.
You know, it made
I
his
know.
jaw drop.
Yeah,
But I'm used to seeing horticultural landscape samples run through my office, and I know what those numbers can look like. And it didn't set me back as far as it did
Yeah.
Matt, but that's because I get it, so I'm a little more accustomed to it. So Diane, that's why we are. And Matt's analogy there, I thought was very accurate. It just needs to be looked at and massaged before we release it to the general public. Okay.
No, understand, I was just wondering
Yeah.
about time.
So anyway, but yeah, I think, we're gonna have to wait a bit on
Hopefully
that.
December.
And I, it is. I mean, I really have hope that, like I said, we have an agronomist coming on as one of our next, I'm thinking they would have some interest in it. I'm hoping they do. We'll encourage that. I'll just put it that way. We'll encourage that.
another item that was discussed is, it was brought forth that it'd be very good if these presentations could be made public. We got there, we were talking about it, and remember, these are kids that are doing this research for a grade.
Right.
Yes.
So they're gonna stand up there giving this research, and we discussed videotaping them just with our phones so we could bring them back.
Right.
The students had never been told anything about them being videotaped while they're giving these presentations.
Right.
So they became a little nervous, they're going for a grade, so we don't have them
We
videotaped.
did not videotape.
Sean does have some funds available. He believes this next semester and going forward, we're gonna work through the communications office at K-State and tell the students up front to
Right.
get these presentations videotaped.
Right.
So we will
We
have
may
them
be
to
able to
present
do
to
that
the
in the
general public,
future,
yes.
but when we kind of got around to that, it was too late to do it for the
Yeah.
first time. So there's
Yeah,
some red tape,
so-
some hoops we need to jump through.
Clean up before you.
Lessons
But
learned,
that's
yes.
just lessons learned.
Lessons learned.
Okay, so that one would fall on, that was my error. So, Ken, did you have a question?
Yeah, these areas that we were developing in this baseline,
Yeah.
the dry areas
Right.
we looked at.
Yeah.
Is that on county land or is that on private?
That was on private
That would be
land.
on private land.
We got
so-
permission.
We got permission from private landowners to go on
That's
that
another
land.
element is
That would be another-
rapport with
yes.
these landowners.
Yes,
correct.
Because
Right.
they can nix anything they want.
Yes,
Yes, they can.
yes, they can. So
So,
Yes.
They
we
can
are
shut us
working
down
with private
immediately.
landowners and our response from them was very cooperative. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Very, yeah. Yeah.
I got one question here, but maybe it's off the wall here, but we all want to do the best we can. And you see it back on picture 6, or page 6,
Okay.
the right-hand picture there. I suppose that guy just went out and traipsed out in the middle.
That
and,
was actually
and
by,
Isaac did it, or did you do it?
no,
No.
students.
No,
You
students
did it,
did it.
okay. He traipsed out and he got a sample here of, I suppose, the mud. Let's just call it the mud.
Yeah, okay, right, of the sediment, right.
Well, we always hear of our big lake being, how much it's filled in and all this and that. What I'm wondering is if while we're doing this, is there any way that the sediment in this tank, or in this bowl of water, do we know whether it's extra high, whether we know it's extra deep? I mean, what I'm getting at is, because we get questioned about this kind of stuff, and whether, how much we're going in there and how much is that. Is there any way that there's any group that looks at this while we're here? I mean,
That was discussed, and that's exactly what we want to hear, that the sedimentation levels in the lake is something we'd like to know. So that's what we need to hear, because we can take that to the students and say that. It was discussed by that group and decided that with the other items they were doing, that was going to make the scope too large. So they did not go forward with that. Isaac did find and provided us with the original blueprints for the lake. So we provided electronic copies to them, so they've got the topographic maps, so they would be able to it would be difficult. They would be able to take that information, put it into a computer generation, and we've got, then use sonar data to map what's there now and do a comparative analysis.
I think as we look at like maybe that would, I think might be of interest to an engineer. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
And so Randy, I think it's possible. I think.
Well,
But I
it's
can't, I don't want to speak for them.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just, the one on the left looks like it's only about yay deep,
Right.
but the one on the right looks like it
Yeah.
may be
Yeah.
that deep.
Yeah.
I mean, just looking at it.
The one on the right was the one that was pulled out in the inflow area right there by the low water
Just
bridge
below
area.
the flush.
And
Yeah, that's
so-
where we're at,
And
yeah.
that's
Right.
predominantly.
You
right
could look
there.
at, right, one is taken from site 9, the other from site 8.
So
you
when
could
they
look
say,
right
when they say
there.
gravimetric sampler, it's a
Yeah.
really heavy soil tube.
Yeah.
So it uses gravity, and when they were out in the deep water, you held it over the edge and you dropped it.
You
That
drop
was
And
it.
whatever
Yeah.
it shoved down into the bottom, that's what you got.
That's what you
Depending
get.
on the way.
Next to the floating dock, they filled it.
Yeah. It was
Down,
fun-
down on the dam.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
It is.
The
It is. I had never seen it done myself. That's the first time I
So
ever seen it done too.
sediment actually accumulates at the top and at the dam.
And at the dam.
And those are the two places it accumulates.
And there were other
it's showing
places
that
in
it's at
the
the
lake
dam,
that
yeah.
they had a hard time even getting a sample
Yeah, they were
because
getting
there
like 2
wasn't
inches and
any.
that was it. One of them, they dropped, the cove with the stone arch.
Yeah, the
They dropped it
stone
out
arch.
there and just kept hitting rock. They had to do
Yeah.
multiple
Yeah.
samples
No
just to
sediment.
get, yeah,
Right.
Huh.
yeah.
Couldn't get enough sediment out of that.
What we also hear from the old timers, we need a flush job, which means a high rain. Or what,
Yeah.
I wonder if the natural bed, natural waterway through there to that end of the dam, if that does anything different than the sides. I mean, I just, you know, 'cause that's, they say it every time, we always, everybody says, we need a flush job, we need a wash, we need a 6-inch rain. We need to flush this out, we need to flush it out, I don't know how
Well,
much
yes,
goes
we do
over.
need a 6-inch.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that, but
Yeah.
just,
There has been some work as far as residence time and stuff. It wasn't presented
Right.
as, again, determined that that's gonna be too much. If you'd like to know more about that, that is definitely something that we can propose to them, that some information on the hydrology of the lake would be of interest.
it's just something to think about,
Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's something,
Thank you.
somebody smarter than me that knows what we're talking
Yeah.
One other thing, you asked what else we wanted you to look at, and I realize the importance of what
Right.
you're doing in the prioritizing of it, and that is important. So, and what Randy had said as well. But if there was room or other areas in the class for maybe to look at parks or something like that.
That's the goal.
That's
That's
the
Certainly,
goal.
that is a goal. That
Oh,
absolutely
For
is.
the entire.
For the
area.
entire area.
Yeah.
Because, once again, the idea, look, this board, you get to wrestle with lots of questions regarding trees and how we're gonna manage, where we're gonna mow and what, and the whole bit.
Right.
The idea is to give you some tools to help you make those decisions, because I don't think you have that today. You don't have that today, all right? And so that's the ultimate goal, all right? This, as we pointed out, all right, it's low cost. You've got $600. We got $600 into this thing, all right? So it's nothing, all right? But because of that, we don't have all the answers tomorrow, all right? But certainly, as we look at what we want to get to, is to give you those tools that when somebody wants permission to do this, you have a way of answering that.
Right, good.
Because today, I don't feel like, as I read it and I watch you struggle with those things, I feel for you. Because you don't have the information you need to make those kinds of decisions. And that's what we hope to do, guys. It really is. And that's why I said, I want to say this again, we're not here to solve blue-green algae. Okay? That may be disappointing to some, but that's not really what we're here to do. But we're here to try to give you some, hopefully to get you some tools that you can make good decisions with.
Well, I sure appreciate every bit of it.
Very good.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you guys a lot.
Mhm. Is there anything that you need from us at this point?
Not at this point, Diane.
Okay.
We, certainly you've given us overwhelming, let's continue with the work. So we're going to continue with the work, and that will start up again in about August probably, okay? And so,
Unless we get our hands on a testing unit.
right, unless we get
If
lucky
that
with one of
comes
those
to
units
fruition,
this summer.
We will come talk to
We'll
you
let
guys
you know if
before
that
anyone,
happens.
get
Right.
approval, let you know exactly what it'll be, what the parameters are.
Right, right. And we'll let you know that if we get lucky. I mean, right now, that's gonna take a stroke of luck, probably.
Yeah.
Okay?
Awesome,
Very good.
awesome, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
thank you.
Isaac, what year did we start putting water in the lake out there? Have you run that yet?
30.
You're getting good.
37.
Good, that's okay, that's cool.
You know, I'm sure they did, but there's several other places the water comes into that lake.
Yes.
You know, like on Airport Road where that pond is, when it overflows, it looks like a river rushing down through that pool. And we'll get a lot of stuff coming in.
It shows a lot of their locations on these maps here.
Yeah.
It does.
All the brown water coming in from the spring, I'm up in that area, they were real bright kids, they come up and asked if they could do a business samples. Here lately, that water's really been brown, coming downstream, you know, pretty brown.
Like it's stirring something up or just?
I don't know, you know, it was fairly clear, and now it seems to be pretty brown. But, so how do they decide on when to shut the lake down for people swimming and that stuff?
But the water quality was also given us, I don't know if they.
It's based on the water quality.
Well,
I
like,
don't know that they
if
will.
there's any,
Bloom.
right, if we do get some discoloration that would prompt a water test, then that's done through KDAG, and then we go by their parameters as far as whether people are allowed to swim or not.
Okay. Neat people doing this, that's a neat deal.
It seems wonderful. And I'm glad the students are getting the experience as well.
Yeah, they're having a good time with it. They just love getting, they put on their head boots, they just love it. Let me get it.
Yeah, they just want to go out there and do it, yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks,
you.
Dwight.
Well, since there's no more public left, unless Yvonne has something to say, wake up over there, lady. Does anybody else have anything else to say? Randy, you have anything on your mind?
No.
Kent? No. Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Randy. All in favor, say aye. Aye.